For 2 years, I paid for a penthouse view in Dubai while my son was sleeping on a concrete floor less than 10 miles away. My daughter-in-law Paige sent me photos of deserts and skylines, and I believed every single pixel while writing checks that would make a banker sweat. I thought I was funding an empire. I was funding my own betrayal. Then a stranger handed me a greasy package at the farmer's market and whispered 6 words that shattered my world. Your son is in hell. What I found inside that package did not just break my heart. It woke up a man who had been sleeping for far too long. My name is Caleb Jefferson. I am 69 years old, and I used to run security for maritime shipping lanes where pirates and smugglers were just another Tuesday. I thought I had seen the worst of humanity until I looked at the woman sitting at my dinner table. Before I tell you how I dismantled her life brick by brick, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to remind someone exactly who they were messing with. It started on a Saturday morning that was supposed to be peaceful. The sun was hitting the pavement of the farmer's market just right, and I was standing there squeezing heirloom tomatoes like any other retired grandfather. I had my routine: coffee at 7, gym at 8, market at 9. It was the disciplined life of a man who had spent 40 years watching screens and reading manifests. I was looking for organic basil for the pasta sauce I was going to make later. I cooked a lot these days. It kept the house from feeling so empty since my wife passed and my son Tevin moved overseas for his big software startup, or so I thought. I was reaching for a bunch of kale when a shoulder slammed into mine. It wasn't an accident. It was a check, hard, deliberate. I didn't stumble because I don't stumble, but I turned around, ready to give a lecture on manners. Standing there was a man who looked like he had been chewed up and spit out by the penal system. He was big, maybe 6'4", with tattoos climbing up his neck like ivy. He smelled like diesel and old tobacco. He wore a delivery uniform that had seen better days, and his name tag read Rocco. I expected an apology or a fight. Instead, Rocco stepped into my personal space close enough that I could count the gray hairs in his beard. He looked around nervously, his eyes darting left and right, scanning the crowd of families and hipsters buying overpriced honey. Then he shoved a package into my chest. It was wrapped in brown butcher paper stained with oil and taped up like it held something illegal. "Take it," he hissed, his voice sounding like gravel in a blender. I frowned and tried to push it back. "I don't want your shut up and listen, old man," he cut me off. "You are Caleb, right? Tevin Jefferson's father." Hearing my son's name from this stranger's mouth made my blood run cold. My hand instinctively gripped the package. Tevin was supposed to be in the Middle East managing a team of developers. He was supposed to be safe. "Where is my son?" I asked, my voice dropping to that low register I used to use when interrogating crew members. "Who are you?" Rocco looked over his shoulder again. "He is not in Dubai. He never was. He is in hell, and it is about 10 miles down the interstate." He leaned in closer, his breath hot on my face. "Paige is lying to you. She has been lying since day one. This package is yours now. Just do not open it here. Open it alone. And for God's sake, do not let her know you have it." Before I could grab him, he turned and melted into the crowd of shoppers. He moved with the speed of a man who was used to being chased. I stood there amidst the smell of fresh bread and flowers, holding a dirty package that felt heavy with dread. My heart was hammering against my ribs, a sensation I had not felt since my days in the field. 10 miles away. The only thing 10 miles down the interstate was the state penitentiary. I left my groceries right there on the table. I walked to my truck, my legs feeling like they belonged to someone else. I tossed the package onto the passenger seat. It sat there looking innocent and terrifying at the same time. I got in and locked the doors immediately. My old training kicked in. I checked my mirrors. I checked the perimeter. I was suddenly back on the job, but the target was my own life. As I drove home, I tried to rationalize it. It had to be a mistake, a scam. Just last week, Paige had shown me a video of Tevin standing on a balcony overlooking the Burj Khalifa. She said the connection was bad, so he couldn't talk long, but he waved and gave a thumbs up. I had sent another $20,000 that same day for server costs. I had sent nearly $500,000 over the last 2 years. I was proud of him. Tevin was soft. He had always been a gentle boy, the kind who picked up spiders to put them outside rather than squashing them. He wasn't built for the world I came from, but he was smart. I wanted him to succeed. I wanted to support him. But Rocco's eyes haunted me. Those were not the eyes of a scammer. Those were the eyes of a man who was afraid. And the package on the seat next to me didn't smell like a prank. It smelled like misery. I pulled into my driveway and hit the garage door opener. I waited until the door was fully closed before I unlocked the truck. I carried the package into my study and locked that door too. I pulled the blinds. The silence in my house was usually comforting, but today it felt oppressive. I sat at my mahogany desk, the one Tevin used to do his homework on, and stared at the oil stains on the paper. I pulled a pocket knife from my drawer and sliced the tape. My hands were steady, but my stomach was churning. I peeled back the paper. The smell hit me first. It was a stale, sour odor, the smell of unwashed bodies and industrial cleaner. Inside was a bundle of orange fabric. I unfolded it. It was a jumpsuit, a standard-issue orange prison jumpsuit. It was dirty and torn at the shoulder. And there, right over the breast pocket, was a piece of white tape with a name written in black marker, Jefferson. I stared at it, my brain refusing to process the information. This was a prop. It had to be. Paige said he was at a conference. Paige said he was meeting investors. I dug deeper into the package. There was a small wad of paper napkins wrapped around something hard. I unfolded the napkins slowly. Inside lay a human tooth. It was an incisor with the root still jagged and bloody, as if it had been knocked out by force, not pulled by a dentist. I dropped it on the desk and pushed my chair back, my breath catching in my throat. I knew that tooth. I had paid for the braces that straightened that tooth when Tevin was 12. I knew the shape of it. Bile rose in my throat. My son, my gentle, brilliant son, who I thought was living the dream I helped finance, was somewhere losing his teeth. There was one more item in the box, a silver USB drive taped to the bottom of the cardboard. I grabbed my laptop. I didn't hesitate. I needed to see. I needed to know. I plugged the drive in and waited for the folder to open. There was only one file, a video file named truth.mp4. I clicked play. The video was shaky, filmed on a contraband cell phone in low light. The background was a concrete wall with peeling paint. Then a face came into frame. It was Tevin. But it wasn't the Tevin from the photos Paige showed me. This man was gaunt. His cheekbones protruded sharply from his face. His left eye was swollen shut, a majestic bruise blossoming purple and black across his skin. His lip was split, and sure enough, there was a gap where his tooth used to be. He looked at the camera with terror. He was whispering, "Dad, if you are seeing this, it means Rocco got to you. Dad, I am not in Dubai. I never went to Dubai." He choked back a sob and wiped his nose with the back of a hand that was covered in scratches. "I have been in state for 2 years, Dad. Paige told me she would handle it. She said if I took the fall for the embezzlement, she would get me out in 6 months with a good lawyer. She said the company needed a scapegoat, and since I loved her, I had to do it." He leaned closer to the camera, his good eye pleading. "She lied, Dad. She told me you were ashamed of me. She showed me emails supposedly from you saying you never wanted to speak to me again because I was a criminal. She said you cut me off. That is why I never called. I thought you hated me." I slammed my fist onto the desk so hard the wood cracked. The pain didn't register. All I could feel was a white-hot rage spreading through my veins like wildfire. Paige, the woman I had welcomed into my home, the woman I treated like a daughter, the woman who drove a Mercedes I paid for. Tevin continued, his voice trembling. "But Rocco told me about the money. He told me Paige is flashing cash outside. Dad, stop sending money. It is not coming to me. I am in here getting beaten up because I can't pay for protection, and she tells me you are broke. She is playing us both. Please, Dad. I don't care if you hate me. Just help me. I don't want to die in here." The video cut off abruptly as a loud buzzer sounded in the background. I sat there in the silence of my study, staring at the black screen. My reflection stared back at me, but I didn't recognize the man I saw. The retiree who grew tomatoes was gone. In his place was the man who used to hunt pirates off the coast of Somalia, the man who knew how to dismantle networks and break people who thought they were untouchable. I looked at the orange jumpsuit. I looked at the bloody tooth. I thought about the $450,000 I had wire transferred to an account Paige controlled. I thought about the dinners where she sat across from me, smiling, drinking my wine, telling me how happy Tevin was. She had told my son I hated him. She had left him to rot in a cage while she spent my money on designer bags and manicures. She had blocked his calls. She had forged my emails. She had played God with my family. I stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the world looked the same. The neighbor was mowing his lawn. A dog was barking. But inside this room, the world had shifted on its axis. I didn't cry. Tears are for grief, and I wasn't grieving. I was strategizing. I picked up the tooth and wrapped it carefully back in the napkin. I folded the jumpsuit and placed it back in the box. I put the USB drive in my pocket. Paige thought she was dealing with a senile old man with a heavy checkbook. She thought Tevin was weak and I was oblivious. She was right about Tevin being soft. He loved too much. He trusted too easily, but she was dead wrong about me. I picked up my phone. I didn't call the police. Not yet. Police take statements and file reports and follow procedures. I needed something faster. I needed total destruction. I dialed a number I hadn't used in 5 years. It belonged to Fletcher, a lawyer who specialized in forensic accounting and burying people under mountains of litigation. Caleb Fletcher answered, his voice surprised. "I thought you were retired." "I was," I said, my voice calm and deadly. "But I just found a pest infestation in my house, Fletcher. A big one. I need you to clear your schedule." I hung up and looked at the photo of Tevin and Paige on my bookshelf. It was taken at their wedding. I paid for that wedding. I paid for the honeymoon. I looked at Paige's smiling face, and for the first time I saw the predator behind the mask. I walked to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water. My hand was steady. My heart rate had slowed down. This was the calm before the violence. I checked the time. It was 3 in the afternoon. Paige usually called me around 4 to give me an update on Tevin. I sat at the kitchen table and waited. When the phone rang 40 minutes later, her name flashed on the screen with a heart emoji next to it. I stared at it for a moment, letting it ring. Let her worry. Let her wonder. I picked up on the 4th ring. "Hello, Paige," I said, letting my voice sound weary and old just the way she liked it. "Dad," she chirped, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "I just heard from Tevin. He is so excited about the new contract. He said he misses you so much." I closed my eyes and pictured my son's swollen face in that cell. "Is that so?" I asked. "He is doing well then." "Oh yes," she said. "He is living the dream, Dad. He said the view from the office is breathtaking." I gripped the phone tight. "That is wonderful, honey," I said. "You know, I was just thinking. I have some extra cash from that land sale down south, about $2 million. I was thinking of sending it over to help him expand. What do you think?" I could practically hear her salivating on the other end of the line. "Oh, Dad, that would be amazing," she gasped. "That would change everything for him." I smiled, a cold, humorless smile. "Good. Why don't I come over for dinner tonight? We can celebrate. And I can bring the check." "I would love that," she said. "I will cook your favorite." I hung up the phone. She was going to cook my favorite, and I was going to serve her a dish she would never forget. She wanted my money. She was going to get something else entirely. I walked back to my study and unlocked the safe. I didn't take out a gun. That was too easy. I took out a file. A file I had started keeping years ago just out of habit. A file on everyone who entered my life. I opened Paige's folder. It was thin, but tonight it was going to get a lot thicker. "I am coming for you, Paige," I whispered to the empty room. "And I am bringing hell with me. If you think you know how far a father will go to avenge his son, you have no idea what is coming next." Paige thought she was the player, but she just became the pawn. Let me know in the comments what you would do if you found out your child was in prison while you were paying for a lie. Would you call the cops, or would you handle it yourself? Stay tuned, because dinner is served and revenge is on the menu. I pulled my truck up to the curb of the house I had bought. It was a sprawling colonial-style mansion that sat on an acre of manicured lawn in the most expensive subdivision in the county. The driveway was paved with cobblestones imported from Italy, or at least that is what Paige had told me when she sent the invoice. I turned off the engine, but I did not get out immediately. I sat there gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned the color of ash. My heart was beating a slow, dangerous rhythm against my ribs. It was the same rhythm I used to feel right before a raid. Controlled chaos. Inside that house sat the woman who had turned my son into a prisoner and me into a walking atom machine. Inside that house was the architect of my family's destruction. I looked in the rearview mirror. The face staring back at me looked calm. It looked like the face of a 69-year-old retiree who worried about his tomato plants and his cholesterol. It was a good mask. It was the mask of Caleb, the gullible father-in-law. The mask of a man who wrote checks without asking questions. I needed that mask tonight because if I let it slip for even a second, I might do something that would send me to a cell right next to Tevin. I took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of old leather and stale coffee inside my truck. I had to be perfect. I had to smile. I had to eat her food and drink her wine and listen to her lies without vomiting. I stepped out of the truck and walked up the path. The landscaping was immaculate. There were fountains gurgling and perfectly trimmed hedges. Every blade of grass looked like it cost $1. And in a way it did. It cost my son his freedom. I rang the doorbell. It played a melodic chime that echoed through the massive house. A moment later, the door swung open. Paige stood there, framed by the golden light of the foyer. She looked like $1 million, literally. She was wearing a silk dress that shimmered when she moved, and on her arm hung a quilted black Chanel bag with the gold interlocking C logo. I recognized that bag. I had paid a $4,000 credit card bill last month that was listed as office supplies. Apparently Chanel counts as office supplies in Paige's world. "Dad," she squealed, throwing her arms around me. I stiffened, but I forced myself to pat her back. Her perfume was expensive and cloying. It smelled like gardenias and greed. "Hello, Paige," I said, making my voice sound raspy and tired. "You look wonderful. Is that a new bag?" She pulled back and flashed a smile that could blind a pilot. "Oh, this old thing," she laughed, waving a hand dismissively. "Tevin sent it to me last month. He got a huge bonus for closing the deal with the sheikh. He spoils me so much." I forced a smile. That boy. He always was generous. I walked inside. The house was a showroom. White marble floors, crystal chandeliers, furniture that looked like it had never been sat on. It was cold. It was sterile. It was a museum dedicated to spending money. And it was empty. No photos of Tevin. No signs of my son anywhere. Just Paige and her things. Come in," she said, ushering me toward the dining room. "I have dinner ready. I made roast duck. Tevin told me it is your favorite. I hate duck. Tevin knows I hate duck." But I nodded and shuffled my feet, pretending to be a little unsteady. "That sounds delicious, honey." We sat at a dining table that was long enough to seat 20 people. It was just the two of us. The silence of the big house pressed in on me. I looked at the empty chair at the head of the table. That was where my son should be. Instead, he was sleeping on a steel cot 10 miles away while his wife ate duck on china plates I paid for. So I said, unfolding my napkin, "How is Tevin? I feel like I haven't heard his voice in months." Paige poured herself a glass of wine. Her hand was steady. She didn't even blink. "Oh, he is doing great, Dad. He is just so busy. You know how it is over there. The time difference is a killer, and the security protocols are strict. He is working on classified government software now, so he can't just pick up the phone whenever he wants." I nodded slowly, cutting a piece of the greasy meat. "Classified, huh? That sounds important." "It is very important," she said, her eyes wide with feigned sincerity. "He is practically running the department now." The prince himself asked for Tevin specifically. I chewed the meat. It tasted like ash. I swallowed it down. "That is amazing, Paige. Simply amazing. But tell me something. I was watching the news this morning and they said it was 110 degrees in Dubai today. How is he handling the heat? You know Tevin has always been sensitive to the sun." Paige took a sip of wine. "Oh, he is fine. He stays inside mostly. The air conditioning in the hotel is fantastic. He says he barely feels it." I frowned slightly, scratching my head as if I was confused. "Hotel? I thought he was at the work site." "Well, yes, but the hotel is connected to the offices," she said, quickly covering her tracks. "It is a whole complex. Very modern." I leaned back in my chair. "I see. And what time is it over there right now? I always get confused with the time zones. I wanted to call him, but I don't want to wake him up." Paige glanced at the clock on the wall. It was 7 in the evening here. She smiled confidently. "It is 7 here, so it must be noon there, Dad. Or maybe 1 in the afternoon. He is probably at lunch right now. That is why he is not answering texts." I smiled back, a slow, confused old man smile. "Noon? Are you sure? I thought they were 8 or 9 hours ahead. Wouldn't it be 3 or 4 in the morning?" For a split second her mask slipped. I saw a flicker of annoyance in her eyes, a flash of irritation that the old man was asking too many questions. But she recovered instantly. "Oh, Dad, you are right. I am so silly. I always get it mixed up. Yes, he is sleeping. That is why we can't call. He needs his rest. He has a big presentation tomorrow." I nodded, tapping my fork against the plate. "Right, sleeping. Of course. Just like he was sleeping last week when I tried to call. And the week before that. He sleeps a lot for a man who is running a department." Paige laughed, a nervous tinkle of a sound. "He works hard, Dad. He needs his sleep." I watched her eat. She ate with small, delicate bites, wiping her mouth after every morsel. She looked so composed, so innocent. If I didn't have a human tooth wrapped in a napkin in my pocket, I might have believed her. She was good. She was world class. But she made a mistake. She thought because I was old, I was stupid. She thought because I loved my son, I was blind. I let the conversation drift. I let her brag about the new car she was looking at. I let her talk about the renovations she wanted to do to the kitchen. I let her dig her hole deeper and deeper. Then she stood up. "Oh, I almost forgot," she exclaimed, clapping her hands together. "Tevin sent something for you. A special gift." She walked over to the sideboard and picked up a wooden box. She carried it to the table with two hands, treating it like a holy relic. "He sent this in the diplomatic pouch," she whispered conspiratorially. "It is very rare. He said he had to pull a lot of strings to get it out of the country." She opened the box. Inside, nestled in black velvet, was a bottle of dark red wine. The label was fancy with gold lettering and a picture of a chateau. "It is a vintage blend," she said. "Only available to the royal family. He wanted you to have it for your birthday coming up." I looked at the bottle. It certainly looked expensive. The glass was heavy and dark. The foil wrapper was intact. "Wow," I said, letting my voice tremble with emotion. "For me. From the royal family." "Yes," she beamed. "Tevin said to tell you he loves you, and he wishes he could be here to drink it with you." I reached out and took the bottle. I held it up to the light, admiring the color. It was a nice prop, a very nice prop. But as I turned the bottle in my hands, my thumb brushed against something on the back. It was a small, sticky rectangle near the bottom edge. I tilted the bottle so the light from the chandelier hit the glass. There it was, a small square of white residue. The kind left behind when you try to peel off a price tag with your fingernail, but you don't quite get all of it. I looked closer. My eyes weren't what they used to be, but they were good enough to spot a threat from a mile away, and they were certainly good enough to read the tiny blueprint that had not been scraped off. Liquor Barn. Liquor Barn was a chain store. There was one on 4th Street about 2 miles from here. I bought my beer there. I felt a cold, hard knot tighten in my stomach. She hadn't even bothered to clean the bottle properly. She had gone down the street, bought a $50 bottle of wine, and handed it to me, saying it came from a prince in Dubai. It wasn't just a lie. It was an insult. It was a slap in the face. She didn't just think I was gullible. She thought I was pathetic. She thought she could hand me garbage and I would thank her for it. She respected me so little that she couldn't even be bothered to run the bottle under hot water to remove the evidence. I looked up at her. She was smiling, waiting for my praise, waiting for me to tear up about my son's thoughtfulness. She looked at me like I was a golden retriever she had just given a treat to. I gripped the neck of the bottle. I wanted to smash it across the marble table. I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab her by her silk dress and drag her to the nearest prison to show her what her husband looked like right now. But I didn't. I forced the rage down deep into the pit of my stomach where I kept all my demons. I let it fuel me. I let it sharpen my mind. "This is incredible, Paige," I said, my voice steady and low. "Liquor from the royals. I am honored." "You deserve it, Dad," she cooed. I set the bottle down gently on the velvet. "You know," I said, looking her dead in the eye, "I think I will save this. I won't open it tonight." "Oh," she said, looking disappointed. "Why not?" "Because," I said, standing up slowly. "A wine this special, a wine with this much history, it deserves a special occasion. I want to drink this when Tevin comes home." I saw a flicker of panic in her eyes. "Well, we don't know when that will be," she said quickly. "It could be months, or a year." "That is fine," I said, picking up the box. "I am a patient man, Paige. I can wait. I have waited a long time for a lot of things. I can wait a little longer for the truth." She frowned, slightly confused by my tone. "The truth?" she asked. The true celebration, I corrected myself, forcing a smile back onto my face. The party we will have when he walks through that door. That is when I will open this bottle. I tucked the box under my arm. Thank you for dinner, Paige. It was enlightening. I walked toward the door, not waiting for her to show me out. I needed fresh air. I needed to get away from the smell of her perfume and the stench of her lies. As I walked to my truck, I looked back at the house. She was standing in the doorway watching me, the silhouette of a predator in a silk dress. She thought she had played me perfectly. She thought she had secured her funding for another few months. She had no idea that she had just handed me the weapon I would use to destroy her. She underestimated me. That was her first mistake. And as I started my truck and pulled away into the dark night, I promised myself it would be her last. She wanted to play games with fake wine and fake stories. Fine, I knew how to play games too, but I played for keeps. And I played to win. The drive to the state correctional facility took less than an hour, but every mile felt like a descent into a different world. I drove past the manicured lawns of my subdivision, past the strip malls and the car dealerships until the scenery turned into gray concrete and barbed wire. Rocco was right. Hell was just down the interstate. I pulled my truck into the visitor lot, which was filled with rusted sedans and women looking tired and defeated. I didn't belong here. My son didn't belong here. But Paige had put us here. Getting inside wasn't as simple as walking through a door. Prisons run on bureaucracy and misery, and they have plenty of both. I walked up to the front desk where a guard with a neck as thick as a tree trunk was staring at a clipboard. He didn't look up. Name, he grunted. Caleb Jefferson. I said, my voice flat. I am here to see inmate number 7492, Tevin Jefferson. The guard scanned a list. Not on the approved visitor list. Step aside. I didn't step aside. Instead, I leaned on the counter and lowered my voice. Tell Deputy Warden Higgins that Caleb Jefferson is here. Tell him I am calling in the favor from the Port Authority investigation in '98. The guard looked up then. He saw something in my eyes that made him hesitate. He saw that I wasn't just a worried father. I was a man who knew how the system worked and how to break it. He picked up the phone. 2 minutes later, the heavy steel door buzzed open. Higgins didn't come down himself, but he sent a junior officer to escort me. We walked through long corridors that smelled of industrial bleach and unwashed bodies. The sound of slamming metal echoed off the walls. I had to empty my pockets, take off my belt, walk through a scanner. Every step was a humiliation designed to remind you that you were powerless. But I wasn't powerless. I was just patient. They led me to a private visitation room. It wasn't the open cafeteria where families hugged. It was a small concrete box with a thick pane of plexiglass dividing the room. On my side there was a metal stool bolted to the floor. On the other side there was a heavy steel door. I sat down. My reflection in the glass looked old, tired, but my hands were clenched into fists on my knees. I waited. 5 minutes. 10 minutes. The anticipation was worse than the drive. I kept picturing Tevin as a boy running in the backyard with a kite. I tried to hold on to that image because I knew what I was about to see would destroy it. The door on the other side clanked open. A guard stepped in, pulling a man in an orange jumpsuit. My breath caught in my throat. The video Rocco gave me was bad, but seeing him in person was a physical blow. Tevin was thin, too thin. His skin was gray and sallow, the color of old newspaper. His head was shaved, revealing a jagged scar above his ear that hadn't been there 2 years ago. He walked with a limp favoring his left leg. He kept his head down, staring at his shackled feet. Sit down, the guard barked. Tevin sat. He didn't look up. He didn't reach for the phone on the wall. He just sat there, slumped over like a man who had forgotten what hope felt like. I picked up the receiver. My hand was shaking. I forced it to be steady. Tevin, I said. He flinched. His head snapped up. When our eyes met, I saw a flash of pure terror followed by a deep, burning shame. He looked at the phone, then back at me. Slowly, painfully, he reached out and picked up the receiver. "Why are you here?" he whispered. His voice was raspy, like he hadn't used it in days. "Go away, Dad. You made your point." I leaned forward, pressing my hand against the cold glass. "What point, Tevin? What are you talking about?" He let out a bitter laugh that turned into a cough. "The point that I am a disgrace. that I am dead to you. Paige told me what you said. She read me the emails. She said you told her not to waste money on a lawyer for a criminal. She said you told her I deserved this. Rage flared in my chest, hot and bright. Paige. She hadn't just stolen my money. She had stolen my voice. She had used my name to break my son's spirit. Tevin, listen to me, I said, my voice intense and focused. Look at me, son. I never said that. I never wrote those emails. I thought you were in Dubai. Tevin blinked, confusion clouding his eyes. Dubai? What are you talking about? She told me you were running a startup, I explained. She sent me photos. She sent me fake contracts. I have been sending money for 2 years thinking I was funding your business. I didn't know you were here until yesterday. He stared at me, his mouth slightly open. The gap where his tooth used to be was visible, a constant reminder of the violence he had endured. You didn't know, he asked, his voice trembling. No. A man named Rocco found me. He gave me the package. He told me the truth. Tevin dropped his head into his hands. His shoulders began to shake. He wasn't laughing. He was sobbing. Great, heaving sobs that racked his thin frame. I watched helpless, unable to touch him, unable to comfort him. She told me I had to do it, he choked out between sobs. The embezzlement. It wasn't me, Dad. It was her company. She cooked the books. When the feds started sniffing around, she panicked. She told me if I took the fall, she would be waiting. She said she would use the money to hire the best appeals lawyer. She said if I didn't do it for her, then I didn't really love her. He looked up, tears streaking through the dirt on his face. She said you would be disappointed if I let my wife go to prison. She used you against me, Dad. She said a real Jefferson protects his family. So I confessed. I signed the papers. I took 5 years to save her. I felt a vein throb in my temple. Manipulation. Pure, cold-blooded manipulation. She knew Tevin's weakness was his desire to please, his desire to be a hero. She had weaponized his love. And then she disappeared, I said, finishing the story for him. She visits once a month, he said, wiping his nose on his sleeve. Just enough to keep me on the hook. She tells me she is working on the appeal. She tells me money is tight. She says you won't help us. She says I have to be patient. She brings me commissary money sometimes, but it is never enough. I have to pay for protection, Dad. If I don't pay, they hurt me. He pointed to his missing tooth. This cost me $500. I didn't have it, so they took the tooth instead. I closed my eyes for a second, forcing myself to breathe. $500. I had paid Paige $4,000 last week for a credit card bill, she said, was for business expenses. She was buying Chanel bags while her husband was getting his teeth knocked out over $500. She cut me off. Tevin continued. I wrote you letters, Dad, every week for the first year. I begged you to forgive me. I tried to explain. I never got them, I said. I know that now, he said. She must have intercepted the mail, or maybe she just paid someone inside to toss them. She controls everything. My access to the outside world goes through her. She is my power of attorney. Power of attorney. The phrase set off an alarm in my head. You signed over power of attorney, I asked. Before I came in, he nodded. She said she needed it to manage the house and the accounts while I was away. I signed everything, Dad. The house, the savings, my shares in the company. It was worse than I thought. She didn't just steal from me. She had legally stripped him of everything before throwing him to the wolves. She had planned this. This wasn't an accident. This was a demolition. Tevin looked at me, his eyes filled with a desperate hope I hadn't seen since he was a child, asking if I could fix a broken toy. Can you get me out, Dad? Please, I can't stay here. I looked at my son. I saw the fear. I saw the pain. But underneath it all, I saw the boy I raised. The boy who was too good for the woman who destroyed him. I leaned closer to the glass, my voice low and dangerous. I am going to get you out, Tevin. I swear on your mother's grave, I am going to get you out. But not today. And not with a lawyer. Not yet. He looked confused. Why not? Why? Because if we file an appeal now, she will know, I said. She will run. She will take the money and disappear, and you will still be in here fighting the system. We need to destroy her credibility first. We need to prove she did it. I looked him dead in the eye. I need you to be strong for a little longer. Can you do that? He hesitated, then nodded slowly. I can try. Good. I am going to get you a new lawyer. Someone she doesn't know. Someone who answers only to me. We are going to build a case against her that is so tight she won't be able to breathe. But you have to revoke that power of attorney. Today. My lawyer will be here this afternoon with the papers. Sign them. Sign everything over to me. I will, he said. Dad, I am sorry. I am so sorry I was so stupid. You weren't stupid, son, I said, my voice softening. You were in love, and you were betrayed by a sociopath. That is not on you. But fixing it, that is on us. The guard stepped forward and tapped his watch. Time was up. Tevin stood. He looked a little taller than when he walked in, a little less like a ghost. Dad, he set his hand lingering on the receiver. Get her. I didn't smile. There was nothing to smile about. I am going to do more than get her son. I am going to bury her. I hung up the phone. I watched as they led him away back into the darkness. I sat there for a moment, staring at the empty chair on the other side of the glass. The image of his battered face burned into my retinas. I stood up and walked out of the prison. The sun was shining outside, but I didn't feel it. I felt cold, calculated. Paige thought she had won. She thought she had buried her secrets in a concrete box 10 miles down the interstate. She was wrong. She hadn't buried them. She had planted them. And now they were about to grow into a nightmare she could never escape. I walked to my truck, took out my phone, and dialed Fletcher again. It is worse than we thought, I told him as I started the engine. She framed him. We are not just going for fraud, Fletcher. We are going for everything. Prepare the paperwork. We are going to war. I walked into First National Bank at 9 in the morning with a document that was going to cut off Paige's oxygen supply. The air conditioning was freezing, and the floors were polished to a mirror shine, but the atmosphere felt dirty. This was where the crime had happened. This was where my money had been laundered from a fatherless love into a con artist's pocket. I approached the desk of the branch manager, a man named Mr. Henderson, who looked like he had been starched into his suit. He smiled the kind of smile that vanished the moment you asked for something difficult. I need to access the accounts of Tevin Jefferson, I said, sliding the power of attorney document across the mahogany desk. I am his father and his legal proxy. Henderson picked up the paper, holding it by the corner as if it were contaminated. He scanned it, his eyes narrowing behind his rimless glasses. Mr. Jefferson, he said, his voice dripping with condescension. This document was notarized yesterday at the state correctional facility. Our policy usually requires the account holder to be present for full access, especially for accounts with this level of activity. I leaned forward, placing my hands on his desk. I didn't blink. The account holder is currently being held against his will in a cage. Because his wife embezzled funds, I said. This document is legal. It is signed. It is witnessed. And if you deny me access, I will have a forensic accountant and a federal subpoena on this desk by noon. Do you want to explain to your regional director why you obstructed a fraud investigation, Mr. Henderson? He swallowed hard. His Adam's apple bobbed. He typed something into his computer, his fingers moving fast. I will need to verify the signature, he stammered. Verify it, I said. I will wait. I sat there for 20 minutes while he made calls. I watched the tellers counting cash. I watched people depositing their paychecks. Normal people living normal lives. They had no idea that a war was being fought right next to them. Finally, Henderson came back. He looked pale. Everything seems to be in order, Mr. Jefferson. What do you need? I want the statements I said. All of them. For the last 2 years. Every deposit. Every withdrawal. Every wire transfer. And I want to know exactly who has signatory power on this account besides my son. He printed a stack of papers thick enough to choke a horse. He handed them to me with a trembling hand. His wife, Paige Jefferson, is a co-signer, he said. She has full access. I took the papers. Not anymore, I said. Freeze the account. No money goes out. No cards work. As of this second, this account is on lockdown. But Sir Henderson protested. If Mrs. Jefferson tries to use her card, it will be declined. She might cause a scene. Let her, I said, standing up. In fact, I am counting on it. I walked out of the bank with the evidence under my arm. I sat in my truck and threw the stack of papers onto the passenger seat, the same seat where Rocco had thrown the package. I drove to a quiet park overlooking the city. I needed silence. I needed focus. I opened the first statement. It was dated 2 months after Tevin supposedly left for Dubai. I traced the lines with my finger. Deposit, $20,000. Wire transfer from Caleb Jefferson. That was me. That was the money for the office lease. I looked at the withdrawals. I expected to see international transfers. I expected to see payments to server farms or contractors in the Middle East. Instead, I saw a hemorrhage. $4,000 to Saks Fifth Avenue, $2,000 to the spa at the Ritz, $600 to a sushi restaurant in downtown. I flipped the page. It got worse. Lease payment, $3,500. But it wasn't for office space. It was for a residential address in the city. A penthouse. Car payment, $1,200. Porsche Financial Services. My blood began to boil. Tevin drove a Honda, I drove a truck. Paige was driving a Porsche on my dime while telling me Tevin needed money for bribes to keep the business afloat. But then I saw it, a recurring transfer, every week like clockwork. Transfer to Brody Miller, $500. Transfer to Brody Miller, $1,000. Transfer to Brody Miller, $2,000. Who the hell was Brody Miller? I scanned the months. The name appeared over and over again. Sometimes it was a direct transfer. Sometimes it was a payment for services. Sometimes it was just cash withdrawals at ATMs near gyms and nightclubs. I did the math in my head. In 2 years, Paige had funneled nearly $100,000 to this Brody character. That was more than she spent on clothes, more than she spent on the penthouse. This wasn't just spending. This was funding. She was supporting someone. I took out my phone and took a picture of the name. I sent it to Fletcher, my lawyer. Find out who Brody Miller is, I texted. And find out why my daughter-in-law is paying his rent. I sat there for another hour going through every line. $450,000. That is what I had sent. And every single penny of it was gone, wasted on vanity and vice. There were no servers. There were no employees. There was no Dubai. There was just a parasite living the high life while the host withered away in a cell. I closed the folder. My hands were cold. This wasn't just theft. This was a dissection. She had carved us up and sold the pieces. My phone buzzed. It was Fletcher. "Check your email," he said. "My investigator is fast. You are not going to like this, Caleb." I opened my email app. There was a file attached. Subject, Brody Miller. I clicked it open. The first thing I saw was a photo. It was a man. White. Maybe 30 years old. He was built like a statue, muscles rippling under a tight tank top. He had bleached blonde hair and a smile that said he knew he was pretty. Brody Miller, the report read. Personal trainer. Aspiring actor. Unemployed since 2019. Current address, Penthouse 4B. The Meridian. The Meridian. That was the address on the bank statements. That was the apartment I was paying for. I scrolled down. There were photos of him. Photos taken by a long lens. Brody getting into a car. My car. The Mercedes I had bought for Tevin as a wedding gift. He was driving my son's car like he owned it. Brody walking a dog. A French bulldog. I remembered Paige telling me she wanted a dog, but Tevin was allergic. Apparently Brody wasn't allergic. And then the photo that stopped my heart. It was taken outside a cafe. Brody was sitting at a table laughing. Sitting across from him was Paige. She wasn't wearing the modest clothes she wore when she came to my house. She was wearing sunglasses and a tight dress. She was leaning across the table, touching his arm. She looked happy. She looked carefree. But that wasn't what killed me. It was her stomach. In the photo, Paige was standing up. Her hand was resting protectively on her belly, a belly that was round and swollen. She was pregnant. I zoomed in on the photo. The date stamp was from yesterday. She looked to be about 5 or 6 months along. I did the math. I counted backward. 5 months, 6 months, even 7 months. Tevin had been in prison for 2 years. He had been locked in a cage with no conjugal visits, no contact with the outside world for 730 days. That baby was not Tevin's. The realization hit me like a physical blow to the chest. It wasn't enough that she stole his money. It wasn't enough that she stole his freedom. She had replaced him. She was building a new family, a new life with this muscle-bound gigolo, using the money I sent to save my son. I dropped the phone onto the seat. I felt sick, nauseous. The level of betrayal was biblical. She had looked me in the eye 2 days ago and told me Tevin missed me. She had sat at my table and eaten my food while carrying another man's child in her womb, a child she was financing with my son's inheritance. I thought about Tevin's face in the prison, the missing tooth, the bruises. He was suffering every single day, believing he was doing it for her, believing he was sacrificing himself for their future, and she was out here playing house with Brody Miller. I picked up the phone again. I dialed Fletcher. I saw the report. I said, my voice dead calm. "I am sorry," Caleb Fletcher said. "It is a mess." "It is not a mess," I said. "It is a target-rich environment." "What do you want to do?" Fletcher asked. "I want everything," I said. "I want the car. I want the penthouse. I want the money she gave him. I want to know what brand of protein shake he drinks so I can buy the company and discontinue it." "Caleb, listen to me," Fletcher warned. "We have to be smart. If she is pregnant, she plays the sympathy card. Judges don't like putting expectant mothers in jail." "She is not a mother," I snapped. "She is an incubator for a scam. That baby is proof of her infidelity. It is proof that Tevin is innocent of everything except loving the wrong woman." I took a deep breath, forcing myself to think like the security chief I used to be. Emotions get you killed. Strategy gets you justice. "Does she know we know?" I asked. "No," Fletcher said. "The bank freeze just went into effect. She is going to find out any minute now when she tries to buy her morning latte." "Good," I said. "Let her panic. Let her feel the walls closing in. But do not serve her with papers yet. Not about the baby, not about Brody." "Why not?" Fletcher asked. "Because I want to see them together," I said. "I want to see the look on her face when she realizes the ATM is broken. And I want Tevin to see it too." Tevin Fletcher sounded skeptical. "He is in lockup, Caleb." "Not for long," I said. "You get that paperwork to the district attorney. You show them the transfers to Brody. You show them the fraud. You get my son a bail hearing. I am working on it, Caleb." "But these things take time." "Buy time," I said. "I have $2 million in liquid assets from the land sale. I will pay whatever bail they set. Just get him out. I need him standing next to me when I drop the hammer." I hung up. I looked at the photo of Paige and Brody again. They looked so comfortable, so entitled. They were living a fantasy life built on the bones of my family. Well, the fantasy was over. Reality was coming for them, and it was driving a pickup truck. I started the engine. I wasn't going home. I had one more stop to make. I needed to see this Brody Miller for myself. I needed to look the man in the eye who was driving my son's car and sleeping with my son's wife. I didn't want to hurt him. Not yet. I just wanted to measure him. I wanted to know how hard he would break when the pressure was applied. I drove to the Meridian. It was a glass tower downtown, the kind of place where people paid for the privilege of looking down on everyone else. I parked across the street and waited. An hour later, the Mercedes pulled out of the garage. My Mercedes. Brody was driving. The top was down. He was wearing sunglasses and nodding his head to music I couldn't hear. I followed him. He drove to a high-end gym in the trendy part of town. He got out, tossing the keys to the valet like he was a movie star. He walked inside with a swagger that said he didn't have a care in the world. I sat there watching him. He was soft. I could tell. He had muscles, but they were gym muscles. Vanity muscles. He had never had to fight for his life. He had never had to survive on grit and determination. He was a pet, a kept man, and Paige kept him with my money. I took a picture of him entering the gym. I sent it to Rocco. "New assignment," I texted. "Brody Miller. Find out everything. Does he sell drugs? Does he cheat on his taxes? Does he have outstanding warrants? I want to know what he eats for breakfast and what he is afraid of at night." Rocco replied 10 seconds later. "Consider it done, boss." I put the phone down. The pieces were moving. The trap was set. Paige was about to find out that her credit cards were useless. She was going to call me in a panic. She was going to spin a new lie, and I was going to be ready. I was going to play the confused old man one last time. I was going to lure them all into one room. Paige, Brody, the baby. And then I was going to turn off the lights and let the monsters eat them. I sat in my study with my laptop open and a cup of black coffee steaming next to me. I wasn't looking at stock prices or weather reports. I was looking at the real-time monitoring dashboard of the credit cards I had issued to my son. But Tevin wasn't using them. Paige was. I watched the little green dots blinking on the map. She was downtown in the Diamond District, Of course she was. She was pregnant by another man, she was driving my car, and she had just convinced herself that I was about to hand over $2 million. So naturally, she went shopping. A notification popped up on my screen. Pending transaction, Van Cleef and Arpels, $12,500. I stared at the number. 12 grand. That was a down payment on a house for some people. That was a year of college tuition. For Paige, it was just a necklace to wear while my son rotted in a cell wearing rags. I didn't get angry. Anger is a waste of energy. I got precise. I moved my cursor over the account management tab. I didn't just want to decline the transaction. I wanted to send a message. I wanted her to feel the ground disappear beneath her feet. I clicked lock card, then I clicked report stolen. I leaned back in my chair and imagined the scene. I pictured Paige standing at the glass counter, probably sipping complimentary champagne while the sales clerk ran the card. I pictured the clerk's smile faltering. I pictured the polite but firm rejection. "I am sorry, ma'am. This card has been flagged. We have to keep it." 30 seconds later, my phone buzzed. A text from the bank confirming the freeze. 2 minutes later, my phone rang. It was Paige. I let it ring. Once, twice, 3 times. I wanted her to sweat. I wanted her to feel the heat rising in her cheeks as the other customers stared at her. I wanted her to fumble through her purse looking for another card, only to realize that I had frozen those too. I finally picked up on the 5th ring. "Hello," I said, my voice calm and uninterested. "Dad," she screamed into the phone. Her voice was shrill, panicked. "There is something wrong with the bank. I am trying to buy a gift for Tevin's client and the card isn't working. It is embarrassing, Dad. You need to call them right now." I took a slow sip of coffee. "A gift for a client," I repeated slowly. "At a jewelry store?" "Yes," she snapped. "It is a cultural thing, Dad. You have to give expensive gifts to do business in Dubai. You wouldn't understand. Just fix it." I smiled at the audacity. She was scolding me for not letting her steal my money fast enough. "I am sorry, honey," I said, letting a little tremor enter my voice. "I think I might have messed something up. I was trying to pay the bills online yesterday and I got confused with all the passwords. Maybe I accidentally reported them lost. I am getting so forgetful lately." "You reported them lost," she shrieked. "Dad, how could you be so stupid?" "I am standing here with the vice president of sales." I hardened my heart. "I will call the bank on Monday, Paige," I said. "I am sure we can sort it out then." "Monday," she yelled. "That is 2 days away. We can't wait until Monday." "Then use your own money," I said softly, and hung up. I sat there watching the screen. Transaction declined, transaction declined, transaction declined. She tried 3 times. She was desperate. She was humiliated. And this was just the appetizer. The main course was coming next. 10 minutes later, she called back. I knew she would. The credit card decline was just an inconvenience, but it signaled something terrifying to a parasite like Paige. It signaled that the host was dying. She needed to secure the supply line immediately. I picked up the phone. I made sure to sound out of breath like I had just walked up the stairs. "Paige," I said, panting slightly. "I am sorry about earlier. I am just so confused with this new computer system." "Dad, listen to me," she said. Her voice had changed. The anger was gone, replaced by a frantic, tearful urgency. It wasn't about the jewelry anymore. She had escalated the lie. "Something terrible has happened," she sobbed. "Tevin just messaged me on an encrypted line. He is in trouble, Dad. Serious trouble." I gripped the edge of my desk. I knew Tevin was in trouble. He was in trouble because of her. "What is it?" I asked, feigning panic. "Is he sick?" "No, it is the police," she cried. "The Dubai police. They raided the office, Dad. They are holding him. They found some irregularities with the visas. They are threatening to put him in a hole for 20 years unless we pay a fine immediately." I closed my eyes, marveling at her evil creativity. She was using the very real nightmare. My son was living a nightmare she created to extort me. "Oh my God," I gasped. "My poor boy. How much do they need?" 50,000, she said, "just to get him out on bail. Then we need more for the lawyers. Dad, if we don't pay by tonight, they are going to transfer him to a black site prison. We might never see him again." She was good. She hit every trigger point. Fear, urgency, a father's love. If I hadn't seen the video from Rocco, I would have been wiring the money already. 50,000, I muttered. "I don't have that in the checking account, Paige. Not with the card frozen." She made a sound of pure frustration. "You said you had $2 million, she hissed. You told me at dinner. I did, I said. I did. But that is in a certified cashier's check from the land sale. I have it right here in my safe. I could hear her breathing change. She stopped crying instantly. The mention of the check acted like a sedative on her hysteria. You have the check, she asked, her voice steadying. Yes, I said. $2 million. I was going to deposit it on Monday. But if Tevin is in trouble... We can't wait for Monday, she cut in. Dad, listen, we can use that check. I know a guy who handles international transfers for high-net-worth clients. He can cash it and wire the funds to the police captain directly. It is the only way. I pretended to hesitate. I don't know, Paige. That sounds risky. A guy who cashes checks on the weekend. It is not risky, she insisted. He is Tevin's business partner. The one I told you about. He is here in the States right now coordinating the logistics. He can help us. But you need to bring the check to me, tonight. I let out a long, shaky sigh. Okay. I will do it. For Tevin. I will bring the check. Thank God, she breathed. Thank God. You are saving his life, Dad. I hung up the phone and looked at the empty safe. There was no check. There was no land sale. There was only a trap. And she had just walked right into it with her eyes wide open. She was bringing in a partner, a guy who could launder money. That had to be Brody. She was going to expose the whole operation just to get her hands on that imaginary $2 million. I stood up and walked to the mirror. I practiced my face. The worried father, the confused old man. I adjusted my collar. I needed to look frail. I needed to look like a victim. Because tonight I wasn't just walking into a lion's den. I was walking in there to skin the lions. 30 minutes later, my phone buzzed with a text from Paige. An address. Not her house. A different address. The text read, "Come here at 7 p.m. It is a private party for the investors. The partner will be there. Bring the package." I looked up the address. It was a mansion in the hills. A rental, probably. A stage for her little play. She wanted to dazzle me. She wanted to intimidate me with wealth and connections so I would hand over the check without asking questions. She wanted to introduce me to this partner and pressure me into signing everything away. Perfect. I called Fletcher. We are moving up the timeline, I said. Tonight is the night. Are you sure, Caleb? Fletcher asked. We haven't served the warrants yet. Forget the warrants, I said. She is throwing a party, Fletcher. She is inviting people. She is bringing Brody out of the shadows. She thinks she is going to collect $2 million in front of an audience. And what are you going to do? Fletcher asked, sounding nervous. I am going to bring the entertainment, I said. I opened my closet. I pushed aside the cardigans and the slacks I wore to the market. I reached into the back and pulled out a suit I hadn't worn in 10 years. It was black, tailored. It fit a little tighter across the shoulders now, but it still looked sharp. I put it on. I tied the tie. I looked like the man who used to stare down warlords in international waters. I went to the garage. I didn't take my truck. I took the old sedan I kept under a tarp. It was nondescript, invisible. I put a metal briefcase on the passenger seat. Inside there was no money. There were no checks. Inside was a file. The forensic accounting of every stolen dollar. The photos of Brody driving my car. The photos of Paige pregnant. The affidavit from the prison warden. And the video of Tevin. I drove toward the hills. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of bruised purple and blood orange. It was fitting. When I arrived at the mansion, the driveway was full of expensive cars. Music was thumping from inside. It wasn't a business meeting. It was a party. A baby shower probably, or just a celebration of their own greed. They were spending money they didn't have, celebrating a victory they hadn't won yet. I parked at the bottom of the hill and walked up. The security guard at the gate stopped me. He was young, big, and looked bored. Name, he asked. Caleb Jefferson, I said. I am the guest of honor. He checked his list and nodded. Go on in. They are expecting you. I walked up the long driveway, clutching the metal briefcase. My heart was cold. My mind was clear. I could see them through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Paige was laughing, holding a glass of champagne. A man with bleached blonde hair was standing next to her, his hand resting possessively on her lower back. Brody. They looked like royalty. They looked untouchable. I reached the front door. It was open. I stepped inside. The noise of the party washed over me. People were drinking, eating, laughing. They were feasting on the carcass of my family. Paige saw me first. Her eyes lit up when she saw the briefcase. She tapped Brody on the shoulder and whispered something. He grinned a predatory shark-like grin. They started walking toward me, parting the crowd like they owned the world. Dad Paige called out, her voice ringing above the music. "You made it." I stopped. I stood my ground. I didn't smile. I didn't wave. I just tightened my grip on the handle of the briefcase. "I made it," I said, my voice cutting through the noise. "And I brought exactly what you deserve." I sat in the leather armchair of my hotel suite, staring at the city skyline. It was 2 a.m, but my mind was wide open. I was running scenarios. I was calculating risks. I was doing exactly what I used to do before a high-stakes extraction operation. The silence of the room was broken by the sharp trill of my phone. It was a video call request. From Paige. I looked at the screen. 2 a.m. meant she was desperate. It meant the freeze on her credit cards was squeezing her throat and she needed to breathe. She needed money. I adjusted my silk robe, took a sip of water to clear my throat, and accepted the call. The screen filled with Paige's face. She was a mess. Her mascara was smeared under her eyes and her hair was pulled back in a chaotic bun. She was hyperventilating. It was a performance that deserved an award. Behind her, I could see white walls and hear the beep of medical machinery. It looked like a hospital waiting room, but something was off. The lighting was too warm. The acoustics were too hollow. "Dad," she choked out. "Thank God you answered. It is Tevin. It is bad, Dad. It is so bad." My heart didn't jump. It didn't even flutter. I knew exactly where Tevin was. He was in a cell 10 miles away, probably sleeping on a thin mattress, so whatever she was about to show me was a fabrication. A ghost story designed to scare an old man into opening his wallet. "What happened?" I asked, keeping my voice low and trembling. "Is he okay?" "He collapsed," she sobbed. "He was at the site and he just collapsed." "They rushed him to the hospital. They say it is a cerebral hemorrhage, Dad, a brain bleed. They need to operate immediately or he is going to die." I leaned closer to the screen. A brain bleed. That was dramatic. It was expensive. It was urgent. It was the perfect lie. "Let me see him," I said. "I can't," she cried. "He is in the ICU. They won't let me take the phone in. But the surgeon is here. He can explain. He needs your authorization, Dad. He needs payment. They won't scrub in without a deposit." She turned the camera. A man stepped into the frame. He was wearing a white lab coat and a stethoscope around his neck. He looked distinguished. He had silver hair and glasses. He looked like a doctor from a daytime soap opera. "Mr. Jefferson," the man said in a grave voice, "I am Dr. Farouk. I am the chief of neurosurgery here at the Dubai Royal Hospital. Your son's condition is critical. We need to relieve the pressure on his brain within the hour, or the damage will be irreversible." I studied him. I looked past the lab coat. I looked at his eyes. They were shifting. He was reading a script. I looked at the background. There was a poster on the wall behind him about heart health. It was in English. Only English. In a Dubai hospital there would be Arabic. How much, I asked. $100,000, the fake doctor said. "We need it wired immediately." I sat back. 100,000. That was the magic number. Enough to pay off Brody's gambling debts, perhaps. Or maybe just enough to keep their lifestyle floating for another month. I rubbed my face with my hand, feigning exhaustion. "Doctor," I said, "I have the money. You know that. But I need to understand the procedure. I used to run security for medical supply chains. I know a little bit about this. What is his intracranial pressure reading right now?" The doctor blinked. He looked off camera for a split second, probably looking at Paige. "It is high," he said vaguely. "Very high. That is why we need to operate." "I see," I said. "And have you secured the consular clearance? You know that for a foreign national undergoing high-risk surgery, you need to file a Form 77 with the U.S. consulate. If he dies on the table without that form, his body cannot be repatriated." "Did you file the form, Dr. Farouk?" The man froze. There was no such thing as a Form 77. "I made it up. I pulled it out of thin air just to see if he would bite." He cleared his throat. "Yes, of course," he said. "The paperwork is being processed. But the surgery cannot wait for bureaucrats, Mr. Jefferson. We need the funds." I narrowed my eyes. He was lying. A real doctor would have corrected me. A real doctor would have told me that medical necessity trumps consular paperwork. This man was a hired gun. An actor paid to play a part in my son's tragedy. "And what about the anesthesia?" I asked. Tevin is allergic to succinylcholine. It is in his medical file. Are you using rocuronium instead? The doctor started to sweat. I could see the sheen on his forehead under the harsh lights of whatever kitchen they were filming in. We are taking all necessary precautions, he stammered. We have his file. Do you? I pressed. Because if you had his file, you would know that Tevin has a titanium plate in his left leg from a soccer injury when he was 12. Is that going to interfere with the MRI you surely did before diagnosing a hemorrhage? Tevin didn't have a plate in his leg. Another lie, another test. The doctor looked panicked now. He was drowning and he knew it. The leg is not the concern right now, he snapped, losing his professional veneer. The concern is his brain. Are you going to pay, or are you going to let your son die while you ask trivia questions? I let the silence stretch. I let it hang there, heavy and suffocating. I watched him squirm. I watched Paige step back into the frame, her face a mask of terror, not for her husband, but for her failing scheme. I am not asking trivia questions, I said, my voice hardening just a fraction. I am asking for competence. You are asking for a fortune to cut open my son's head. I think I have a right to know you aren't going to kill him. Paige grabbed the phone. The camera shook. Dad, stop it, she shrieked. Just send the money. He is dying. Do you want him to die? Do you want his blood on your hands? I looked at her. I looked at the woman who had put my son in a cage and was now using his imaginary death to rob me. I wanted to reach through the screen and choke the truth out of her. But I couldn't. Not yet. I needed them all in one place. I needed the final act. I took a deep breath, forcing my face to crumble into despair. No, I whispered. No, I don't want him to die. I love him, Paige. He is all I have. Then send the wire, she begged. Send it now. I can't. I cried. What do you mean you can't? She screamed. You said you had the check. You said you had $2 million. I do. I said, wiping a fake tear from my eye. I have the check right here in the hotel safe, but the banks are closed, Paige. It is the middle of the night. I can't wire a check. You know that. She went silent. She was thinking. She was calculating. Then cash it, she hissed. Find a way. There is a way. I said slowly, as if the idea had just occurred to me. I have a contact. A private banker who handles emergency liquidity for high net worth individuals. He owes me a favor. He can cash the check for me. Tonight. Do it, she said. Call him. I will, I said. But Paige, I need to give the money to you directly. This banker deals in cash, large bills. He won't wire it to an account in Dubai. He doesn't touch international transfers. He will hand me a briefcase with $2 million in it. I saw her eyes widen. Cash. $2 million in cash. It was the ultimate prize. It was untraceable. It was freedom. It was everything she and Brody had ever dreamed of. Okay, she said, her voice trembling with greed. Okay, cash is fine. We can deposit it ourselves. We can wire it from here. Good, I said. But I am not handing that kind of money to a stranger. I am not handing it to a courier. I need to see you, Paige. I need to know you are handling this personally. I am in the States, Dad, she said quickly, covering her lie. I flew back yesterday to get the money. I didn't want to tell you because I didn't want you to worry. I am here. I smiled internally. Gotcha. You are here, I asked, feigning surprise. Thank God. That makes this easier. Yes, she said. I am at the rental house. The big one in the hills. The one I sent you the address for. Okay, I said. Listen to me, Paige. I will meet the banker now. I will get the cash. I will bring it to the house. But I want to see this doctor again. I want him there. Why, she asked, suspicious. Because I want to give him the first 100,000 personally, I said. I want to look him in the eye and tell him that if my son dies, I will use the other 1.9 million to hunt him down. I want him to understand the stakes. Paige hesitated. She looked at the fake doctor. He looked terrified, but he also looked greedy. He flew in with me. She lied effortlessly. He is here monitoring Tevin remotely. He will be at the party. I mean, the meeting. The party. She slipped. She was throwing a party. She was going to celebrate her victory with champagne and my money. Good, I said. I will be there in 2 hours. Have the doctor ready. And Paige, have the paperwork ready. I want to see the medical scans. I want to see the invoices. If I am handing over my life savings, I want to see what I am buying. We have everything she promised. Just hurry, Dad. Every minute counts. I will hurry, I said. I am coming, Paige. I am coming to save my son. I hung up the phone. The screen went black. I sat there in the dark room feeling the adrenaline coursing through my veins. It was a potent cocktail of hatred and focus. They were all going to be there. Paige, the fake doctor, Brody, the friends they were trying to impress. They were gathering for a feast and I was bringing the main course. I stood up and walked to the closet. I pulled out the metal briefcase I had prepared. It was heavy. It felt substantial. It felt like $2 million. But it wasn't money inside. I opened the latches. Inside were stacks of paper. But they weren't banknotes. There was the affidavit from the prison warden confirming Tevin S. incarceration dates. There were the forensic accounting sheets showing every stolen dollar, every unauthorized transfer, every payment to Brody Miller. There were the photos of Brody driving my car, the photos of Paige pregnant. There was the background check on the actor who played the doctor. His name was Simon Vance, a failed theater actor with a record for petty larceny. And right on top was a tablet loaded with the video Tevin had recorded in his cell. This was my payload. This was the bomb I was going to drop in the middle of their celebration. I closed the briefcase. It clicked shut with a sound like a gun cocking. I walked to the bathroom and splashed cold water on my face. I looked at myself in the mirror. Caleb Jefferson, 69 years old, father, widower, and tonight, executioner. I wasn't going to raise my voice. I wasn't going to throw a punch. I was going to walk into that house and I was going to dismantle their lives with the precision of a surgeon. I was going to strip them of their lies, their money, and their freedom. And I was going to enjoy every second of it. I grabbed my keys, I grabbed the briefcase, I walked out of the hotel room and didn't look back. The drive to the hills was quiet. The city lights twinkled below me, oblivious to the storm that was moving through the streets. I thought about Tevin. I thought about the fear in his eyes. "Hold on, son," I whispered to the windshield. "Daddy is coming, and I am bringing the fire." I pulled up to the gate of the mansion. The same guard was there. He waved me through. I was expected. I was the guest of honor. I was the mark. I parked the car. I picked up the briefcase. I walked to the front door. I could hear the music. I could hear the laughter. They were celebrating. They thought they had won. I reached for the door handle. My hand was steady. My heart was cold. Let the party begin. While I was playing, the confused old man on the phone with Paige, my lawyer, Fletcher, was waging a scorched earth campaign in the district attorney's office downtown. Fletcher did not believe in knocking. He believed in kicking the door down with a subpoena in his hand. It was 9 a.m. when he walked into the office of District Attorney Patterson. He didn't go alone. He brought a forensic handwriting analyst and a cybersecurity expert. Fletcher slammed a binder onto Patterson's desk. It contained the digital trail of a crime that had been pinned on the wrong man. We had the emails Paige sent to Tevin in prison, the ones where she threatened to divorce him if he didn't take the plea deal, the ones where she coached him on exactly what to say to the investigators. We had the metadata proving the embezzlement transfers were authorized from a laptop with an IP address registered to Paige's personal cell phone, not Tevin's workstation. But the nail in the coffin was the signature. Paige had gotten sloppy. Greed does that to amateurs. On the final authorization documents for the stolen funds, the signature loop on the letter T was a perfect match for Paige's handwriting, not my son's. The forensic analyst had prepared a 20-page report confirming it was a forgery. Fletcher told me later that the DA turned a shade of gray, usually reserved for old concrete. They had locked up an innocent man for 2 years based on a confession coerced by his own wife. It was a prosecutorial nightmare. Fletcher didn't ask for a new trial. He demanded an immediate emergency bail hearing based on new exculpatory evidence. He made it clear that if Tevin wasn't released pending the investigation, he would hold a press conference on the courthouse steps that would end Patterson's career. The system is slow, but money and fear act like grease in the gears. By noon, the judge had signed the order. Tevin was being released on his own recognizance pending the review of the fraud charges against his wife. I wired the processing fees before the gavel even hit the wood. I wanted my son out. I wanted him breathing free air before the sun went down. I sat in my sedan outside the rear exit of the correctional facility. It was a desolate place. High fences topped with razor wire cut through the blue sky. The ground was cracked asphalt and dead weeds. It smelled of exhaust and despair. I watched the heavy steel door. It was the same door that had swallowed thousands of men, but today it was going to spit one back out. The buzzer sounded, a harsh mechanical grind that made my teeth ache. The door swung open with a groan. Tevin stepped out. He wasn't wearing the orange jumpsuit anymore. He was wearing the clothes he had been arrested in 2 years ago. A pair of jeans that now hung off his hips like a sack and a t-shirt that was 2 sizes too big for his emaciated frame. He blinked in the sunlight, shielding his eyes with a hand that shook violently. He looked like a ghost. He looked like a man who had forgotten how to walk without shackles. He took 2 steps forward and then he crumbled. His knees just gave out. He hit the asphalt hard and curled into a ball, burying his face in his hands. He was sobbing. It wasn't a sound of relief. It was the sound of a soul breaking under the weight of 2 years of torture. I didn't run to him. I didn't coddle him. I got out of the car and walked over to him with the steady gait of a man who has walked through fire. I stood over him. I cast a shadow over his broken form. "Get up, Tevin," I said. My voice was low, but it carried the weight of iron. He looked up at me. His face was streaked with grime and tears. The gap in his teeth made him look like a frightened child. "Dad," he choked out. "I can't. I am sorry. I am so sorry. I am weak." "You are not weak," I said. "You survived. Weak men die in there, Tevin. You are still breathing. Now get up." He shook his head, his body trembling. "She broke me, Dad. She took everything. She took nothing that we cannot take back," I snapped. "Stand up. Do not let her see you on your knees. Do not let the world see a Jefferson on the ground." I reached down and grabbed him by the front of his shirt. I hauled him to his feet. He was light, too light. I held him there, steadying him. I looked him dead in the eye. "You listened to me once when you were a boy," I said. "I told you that a man is not defined by how he falls. He is defined by how he gets up. You fell for a woman who is a predator. You took a bullet for a lie. That is done. That is the past. Right now you are a free man, and tonight you are going to be an avenger." Tevin stared at me. He saw the fire in my eyes. He saw the resolve. Slowly the trembling stopped. He took a deep breath. He wiped his face with his sleeve. He straightened his spine. It was a small movement, but it was everything. "I am ready, Dad," he whispered. "Good," I said. "Get in the car. We have work to do." I didn't take him to a hospital. I didn't take him to a therapist. I took him to war. But first I had to turn the prisoner back into the prince. We had 4 hours before the party. 4 hours to erase 2 years of prison from his face. I drove to a barber shop on the south side. It wasn't a fancy salon. It was a place where old men played chess and the barbers used straight razors. I knew the owner, an old friend named Marcus, who knew how to keep his mouth shut. "Fix him," I said, pointing to Tevin. "I want the prison stink off him. I want him to look like he owns the block." Marcus didn't ask questions. He put Tevin in the chair. He shaved off the patchy beard. He cut the hair into a sharp fade. He used hot towels and oils. When the hair was gone, I could see the sharp lines of Tevin's jaw. He looked gaunt, but he also looked fierce. Next was the dentist. I had called in a favor from Dr. Evans, a cosmetic specialist who owed me for a security consultation I did for his clinic years ago. He opened his office on a Saturday just for us. "I can't do an implant today," Dr. Evans said, looking at the gap in Tevin's mouth. "It takes months to heal." "I don't need him to chew a steak," I said. "I need him to smile at his wife while we destroy her. Make him a temporary bridge. Make it look perfect." Dr. Evans worked fast. 45 minutes later, Tevin looked in the mirror. He bared his teeth. The gap was gone. His smile was back. It was a cold smile, a wolfish smile, but it was whole. The final stop was a tailor shop downtown. It was a place that didn't have a sign out front. You had to ring a bell to get in. The owner, Mr. Rossi, was a man who understood that a suit was armor. "I need something for tonight," I told Rossi. "Something that says, power. Something that says, I am back from the dead." Rossi measured Tevin with quick professional movements. "He is very thin," Rossi noted. "We need a slim cut. European style. Midnight blue. It will make him look sharp, not sick." Rossi pulled a suit off the rack and went to work with pins and chalk. He altered it on the spot, his hands moving like a magician. While he worked, I went to the display case. I picked out a shirt, crisp white Egyptian cotton. I picked out a tie, silk, deep burgundy, and I picked out a pair of shoes, hand-stitched Italian leather. Tevin changed in the back room. When he stepped out, the transformation was complete. The prisoner was gone. Standing there was a man who looked like he ran a Fortune 500 company. The suit fit him like a second skin, hiding the malnourished frame and emphasizing his height. The haircut made him look dangerous. The new tooth completed the illusion. He looked in the three-way mirror. He touched the lapel of the jacket. He stood taller. His shoulders went back. His chin went up. He looked at his reflection, and for the first time in 2 years, he recognized himself. He turned to me. "Do I look like a victim, Dad?" he asked. I shook my head. "No, son. You look like the judge, the jury, and the executioner." Tevin nodded. He adjusted his cuffs. "Let us go get my life back," he said. We walked out of the shop and into the setting sun. The city was waking up for the night, and in the hills, Paige was putting the finishing touches on her party. She was pouring champagne. She was laughing with Brody. She was waiting for a confused old man to bring her a check. She had no idea that the old man was bringing a shark. I opened the car door for Tevin. "Are you hungry?" I asked. "I am starving," he said. "Good," I replied, starting the engine. "Because tonight we feast." The bass from the sound system vibrated through the soles of my shoes before I even reached the front steps. It was a heavy, thumping rhythm that had no place in a business meeting but fit perfectly at a celebration of theft. I walked up the illuminated driveway of the mansion in the hills. The house was a glass and steel monstrosity that looked out over the city lights, a modern fortress for the nouveau riche. And tonight it was filled with people who were drinking my retirement savings. I stepped through the massive oak double doors and the smell hit me instantly. It was a mix of expensive perfume, marijuana smoke, and catered shrimp. The main hall was packed. There were at least 50 people there. They were young, they were beautiful, and they were all strangers. These were not Tevin's business partners. These were not investors. These were parasites. Men in skinny suits stood around laughing loudly while women in cocktail dresses balanced flutes of champagne. I scanned the room with the eyes of a man who used to clear rooms for a living. I saw the open bar in the corner stocked with top-shelf liquor. I saw the catering staff moving through the crowd with trays of hors d'oeuvres. I did a quick mental calculation. The catering alone cost $5,000. The alcohol another $3,000. The venue rental probably $10,000. They were burning through cash like it was oxygen because they thought the supply was infinite. And there in the center of it all, holding court like royalty, were Paige and Brody. Paige looked radiant. She was wearing a white dress that hugged her curves and emphasized the baby bump she had been hiding from me under loose sweaters. She had a glass of sparkling cider in her hand, playing the part of the glowing mother-to-be. She threw her head back and laughed at something Brody said. Brody was standing right next to her, his arm draped casually over her shoulders. He was wearing a suit that was too shiny, and his shirt was unbuttoned one too many times. He looked like exactly what he was, a gym rat who had won the lottery. He was holding court, pointing at the view, gesturing with a cigar that cost more than my son's weekly commissary allowance. They looked comfortable. They looked entitled. They looked like two people who had gotten away with murder and were throwing a party to celebrate the body count. I watched them for a moment, letting the hate crystallize in my chest. They were toasting to their future on the grave of my son's life. I adjusted my grip on the metal briefcase. It was time to crash the party. I stepped fully into the light of the chandelier. I didn't say a word. I just stood there, a 69-year-old black man in a dark suit holding a metal case that looked like it contained nuclear launch codes. It took about 10 seconds for the ripple effect to happen. The people nearest the door noticed me first. They stopped talking. They nudged their neighbors. The silence spread like a wave, moving through the room until the only sound was the thumping bass from the speakers. Paige turned around. Her smile froze on her face. For a second, I saw pure terror in her eyes. She looked at the briefcase, then at my face, then back at the briefcase. The greed won out over the fear. She saw the metal case, and she saw salvation. She saw $2 million. "Dad," she shouted, her voice breaking the tension. "You made it." She handed her glass to a waiter and rushed toward me, waddling slightly in her heels. She threw her arms open wide. "Everyone," she announced to the room. "This is Caleb. This is Tevin, his father. He is the hero of the hour." The crowd applauded politely. I didn't move. I didn't smile. I let her hug me. Her body felt stiff. She smelled of fear and expensive lotion. "I am so glad you came," she whispered in my ear. "Do you have it? Do you have the cash?" I pulled back and looked her in the eye. "I have exactly what you asked for, Paige," I said, my voice flat and carrying to the back of the room. Brody sauntered over. He had a cocky grin plastered on his face, but his eyes were wary. He sized me up, looking at my gray hair and my wrinkles and deciding I wasn't a threat. "Mr. Jefferson," he said, extending a hand that was manicured and soft. "I have heard so much about you. I am so glad we finally get to meet. I looked at his hand. I didn't take it. Who are you? I asked loudly. The room went quiet again. Brody's smile faltered. He pulled his hand back, smoothing his hair. Oh, right, Paige interjected quickly, a nervous laugh escaping her lips. Dad, this is Brody. He is my cousin. From my mother's side. He is the one helping us with the logistics. He is the partner I told you about. Cousin, I repeated. Yes, she said, nodding vigorously. He flew in to help with the transfer. He is family dad, just like you. I looked at Brody. Cousin. Partner. Lover. Thief. Family helps family, right? Mr. Jefferson Brody said, regaining his composure. We are just trying to help Tevin. Is that right? I said. You are helping Tevin. By throwing a party. Paige stepped in, sensing the danger. It is a fundraising gala, Dad. She lied effortlessly. All these people, they are potential investors. We are raising capital for Tevin's legal defense fund. We are doing everything we can to bring him home. I looked around the room at the people drinking free alcohol and eating shrimp. It looks like a hell of a fundraiser, I said. It is, she said, beaming. And now that you are here, we can make the big announcement. She grabbed my arm and pulled me toward the center of the room. Brody followed close behind, eyeing the briefcase in my hand like a hungry dog eyeing a steak. Paige clapped her hands again. The DJ turned down the music. Everyone, please listen up, she called out. The room fell silent. All eyes were on us. Paige placed one hand on her swollen belly and the other on my shoulder. I have some incredible news, she said, her voice trembling with fake emotion. As you know, my husband Tevin is going through a terrible ordeal right now. He is being held unjustly overseas. But he is fighting, and we are fighting for him. She paused for dramatic effect. But tonight isn't just about the struggle. It is about hope, because Tevin left me with a parting gift before this nightmare started. She rubbed her belly. I am happy to announce that I am expecting. We are having a baby boy. A chorus of ahs and cheers went up from the crowd. I stood there stone-faced. And the best part, she continued, squeezing my shoulder, is that his grandfather is here to celebrate with us. Caleb, thank you for standing by us. Thank you for bringing the resources to save your son and to secure the future of your grandson. She looked at me, her eyes shining with triumph. She thought she had checkmated me. She thought that by announcing the baby publicly, she had locked me in. How could I refuse to give money to my own grandchild? How could I abandon a pregnant woman in front of a room full of witnesses? She introduced Brody again. And thank you to my cousin Brody for being my rock while Tevin is away. He has been stepping up to help with everything. Brody nodded solemnly, playing the part of the supportive relative perfectly. We are all family here, he said, raising his glass. To Tevin, and to the baby. The crowd raised their glasses. To the baby they chorused. I let the toast finish. I let them drink. I let them smile. I waited until the glasses were lowered and the room was quiet again, waiting for the old man to speak. Waiting for the old man to open the briefcase and make it rain. I cleared my throat. That is a beautiful speech, Paige, I said, my voice projecting clearly to every corner of the room. A beautiful story. A grandson. I looked at her belly, then up at her eyes. Tevin will be so surprised, I said, since he has been in a maximum security prison for 2 years without a single conjugal visit. The silence that followed was instant and absolute. It was the kind of silence that happens after a gunshot. Paige's smile vanished. Her face went the color of ash. Brody froze his glass halfway to his mouth. What? Paige whispered. I turned to the crowd. She said, "This is my grandson," I announced. She said, "Tevin is the father." I turned back to Paige and smiled a cold, shark-like smile. Is that so, Paige? Because the math doesn't add up. Unless the Holy Spirit visited you in the penthouse I paid for. I think we have a problem. I looked at Brody. Or maybe I said, my voice dropping an octave, maybe we should just ask the real father. I gestured to Brody. What do you think, cousin? Do you want to tell them? Or should I? Paige made a sound like a strangled cat. Brody took a step toward me, his hands curling into fists. Old man, watch your mouth, he growled. I didn't flinch. I just tapped the metal briefcase. I have 2 million reasons to open my mouth, son, I said. And I have a lot more than money in this box. I looked at the crowd. They were frozen eyes, wide phones out, recording everything. You wanted a show, I said to the room. You wanted a big announcement. I looked at the DJ booth where I had paid the sound guy $500 before I walked in the door. Hit it, I said. The lights in the room went black. The darkness was absolute, but only for a second. Then a single beam of light cut through the room, hitting the massive projection screen that Paige had set up to show off ultrasound photos. But instead of a grainy image of a baby, a video flickered to life. The sound of static filled the room, followed by a voice that was raspy and broken, but unmistakably familiar to everyone there. My name is Tevin Jefferson. A gasp rippled through the crowd. Paige dropped her glass. It shattered on the marble floor, the sound like a gunshot in the silence. On the screen, Tevin's face appeared, not the handsome, polished Tevin from the wedding photos. This was the Tevin from yesterday. The Tevin with the swollen eye, the split lip, the missing tooth. He looked like a man who had been through a war. If you are watching this, he said, his eyes staring directly into the camera, directly into the souls of everyone in that room. It means my father found me. Paige stumbled backward, clutching her chest. No, she whispered. No, that is impossible. Tevin continued. I am not in Dubai. I have never been to Dubai. For the last 2 years, I have been inmate number 7492 at the State Correctional Facility. I am in here because my wife, Paige Jefferson, asked me to take the fall for her company S embezzlement. The crowd erupted. People were whispering, pointing, pulling out their phones to record the screen. The party had turned into a public trial. She told me it was temporary, Tevin said on the screen. She told me she loved me, but she left me here to rot. She stole my money. She stole my freedom, and she lied to my father to steal his retirement too. I watched Paige. She was shaking her head violently, her eyes wide with terror. It is a deepfake, she screamed over the video. It is not real. But nobody was listening to her. They were captivated by the horror on the screen. Brody looked around nervously. He realized the tide had turned. He started to back away toward the patio doors, looking for an exit. Not so fast, cousin, I said, stepping into his path. The show is just starting. Tevin on the screen leaned closer. Paige, if you are watching this, know one thing. I am coming for you, and I am bringing the truth with me. The video cut to black. The lights in the room slammed back on, blindingly bright. The guests blinked, dazed and confused. And then the front doors swung open. The sound was heavy, a solid thud that echoed through the hall. Everyone turned. Standing in the doorway was a man. He wore a midnight blue suit that fit him like armor. His hair was sharp. His shoes were polished. He looked like a king returning to reclaim his throne. It was Tevin. But it wasn't the Tevin from the video. It was the Tevin I had rebuilt. He walked into the room with a stride that was confident and predatory. He didn't look at the guests. He didn't look at me. He looked only at Paige. Paige let out a scream that was primal. She fell to her knees, her hands covering her mouth. You are dead, she shrieked. You are supposed to be in prison. How are you here? Tevin stopped 10 feet away from her. He looked down at her with eyes that were cold and dead. I got time off for bad behavior, he said, his voice smooth and dangerous. Brody, seeing his meal ticket collapsing on the floor, decided to play the tough guy. He stepped forward, puffing out his chest, trying to intimidate the man he thought was weak. Hey man, back off, he growled. You are upsetting her. You don't want to mess with me. Tevin didn't even flinch. He just looked at Brody like he was a bug on his windshield. And who are you? Tevin asked. The cousin, the partner, or the father? Brody swung. It was a clumsy haymaker aimed at Tevin's jaw. But before it could connect, a hand shot out from the shadows and grabbed Brody's wrist. It was Rocco. He had slipped in through the side door unnoticed. Rocco twisted Brody's arm behind his back with a sickening crunch and slammed him face first into the buffet table. Shrimp and cocktail sauce went flying. Stay down, pretty boy, Rocco growled, pressing his knee into Brody's back. Or I will break the other one. Tevin didn't even look at the scuffle. He kept his eyes on Paige. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a thick envelope. He tossed it onto the floor in front of her. Pick it up, he said. Paige, shaking, reached out and opened the envelope. She pulled out a stack of papers. Read it, Tevin commanded. Read it to the room. She stared at the papers, her face going from pale to translucent. She couldn't speak. Read it. Tevin roared, his voice cracking like a whip. Paige sobbed. It says paternity test. Probability of paternity 0% for Tevin Jefferson, 99.9% for Brody Miller. The crowd gasped again. The whispers turned into shouts of outrage. "Keep reading," Tevin said. "The next page." Paige flipped the page. Her hands were trembling so hard the paper rattled. "It is a police report," she whispered. "For Brody Miller, possession with intent to distribute, assault, fraud." She looked up at Brody, who was groaning on the table. "You told me you were an investor. You told me you ran a hedge fund." Brody spat blood onto the white tablecloth. "I told you what you wanted to hear, babe. Just like you told him." He jerked his head toward Tevin. Tevin laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. "You two deserve each other," he said. "A thief and a liar. But here's the best part, Paige. The part you didn't see coming." He pointed at Brody. "Your boyfriend there. He sold you out." Paige looked confused. "What?" "My father had a little chat with him yesterday," Tevin explained. "He offered him a choice. Go down for the drugs we found in his gym locker or tell us everything about your little scheme." Guess what he chose? Brody tried to lift his head. "It was a setup," he yelled. "They planted it." "Does it matter?" Tevin asked. "You signed the statement, Brody. You admitted everything. You told us where she hid the money. You told us about the fake doctor. You even told us about the plan to frame me for your debts." Paige looked at Brody with pure hatred. "You traitor," she hissed. Brody laughed, a wet, gurgling sound. "Traitor. You were going to let me raise another man's kid in a stolen house. We are both snakes, honey. I just bit first." Tevin turned to the crowd. "This is the woman who sent me to prison," he announced. "This is the woman who is pregnant with her lover's child while spending my father's retirement. And this is the party she threw to celebrate." He walked over to the table and picked up a bottle of the expensive champagne. He looked at the label. "Vintage," he said. "Nice." He smashed the bottle on the floor. Glass and foam exploded everywhere. Paige flinched, covering her head. "The party is over," Tevin said. "Get out, all of you." The guests didn't need to be told twice. They scrambled for the doors, trampling over each other to escape the disaster. In 2 minutes, the room was empty except for us. Me, Tevin, Rocco holding down Brody, and Paige kneeling in the ruins of her life. Tevin walked over to me. He put a hand on my shoulder. "Thank you, Dad," he said softly. I looked at him. He was strong. He was broken, but he was strong. "We are not done yet," I said. I looked at the briefcase in my hand. I still had one more card to play. The final nail in the coffin. I walked over to Paige. She looked up at me, her eyes pleading. "Dad, please," she begged. "He tricked me. Brody made me do it. I was scared." I looked down at her. I didn't see a daughter anymore. I didn't see a victim. I saw a stranger. "Save it for the judge." "Paige," I said. I opened the briefcase. "Because you are going to need a really good story where you are going." The silence in the room was heavy, pressing down on us like a physical weight. The guests had fled like rats from a sinking ship, leaving behind spilled drinks and overturned chairs. The party was over, but the reckoning was just beginning. Paige was still on her knees amidst the shattered glass of the vintage champagne bottle Tevin had destroyed. She looked small now. The arrogance that had fueled her for 2 years, the entitlement that allowed her to sleep soundly while my son slept on concrete, it was all gone. All that was left was a desperate woman realizing she had run out of road. She looked at Brody, who was still pinned to the buffet table by Rocco. Brody was bleeding from his nose, and his eyes were darting around looking for an exit that didn't exist. He was useless to her now. He was a broken tool. So she did what parasites always do when the host fights back. She tried to find a new vein. She crawled toward me. She didn't stand up. She crawled on her hands and knees, ignoring the shards of glass that snagged her expensive dress. She reached out for my pant leg, her hands trembling. "Dad," she wept, her voice hitching in her throat. "Dad, please, you have to listen to me." I took a step back. I didn't want her touching me. I didn't want her pollution on my suit. "Don't call me Dad," I said, my voice ice cold. "That title is earned, Paige, and you lost the right to use it the day you signed my son's name to a confession." She shook her head violently, tears streaming down her face, ruining the professional makeup I had undoubtedly paid for. "It wasn't me," she sobbed, pointing a shaking finger at Brody. "It was him. It was all him. He made me do it, Caleb. He is dangerous. He threatened me." I looked at Brody. He was groaning in pain, but he lifted his head enough to glare at her. "You lying witch," he spat. "You came to me. You said you had a rich father-in-law who was too stupid to check his bank statements." You said your husband was a weakling who would do anything you said. Shut up, Paige shrieked, her voice cracking. Shut up, Brody. Caleb, he is lying. He forced me. He said he would hurt Tevin if I didn't help him get the money. He said he would hurt the baby. I was scared, Caleb. I was a terrified pregnant woman trying to protect her family. I watched her performance. It was impressive in a grotesque sort of way. She was trying to rewrite history in real time. She was trying to turn the villain into the victim. She looked up at me, her eyes wide and pleading, trying to tap into that well of sympathy she thought I still had. I did it for you, she whispered. I was trying to get the money back. I was trying to fix it so Tevin could come home. Please, Caleb. I am the mother of your grandchild. You can't let them take me. Think about the baby. I looked at her swollen belly. There was a baby in there, an innocent life caught in a web of greed. But that baby wasn't my blood, and even if it were, I wouldn't let it be raised by a wolf. You are not a victim, Paige, I said. You are the architect. You think I don't know about the shell companies. You think I don't know you transferred the deed to this house into an LLC solely under your name 3 months ago. Was Brody forcing you to do that too? Was he holding a gun to your head while you notarized the documents? She froze. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. I know everything, I continued. I know you paid off the prison guards to look the other way while Tevin got beaten. I know you intercepted his letters. I know you told him I hated him. That wasn't Brody. That was you. That was your cruelty, Paige. Brody is just a thug. You are a monster. She collapsed back onto her heels, covering her face with her hands. She knew it was over. She knew the manipulation hadn't worked, but her eyes kept darting to the metal briefcase in my hand. Even in her terror, the greed was still there. She still thought there was $2 million in there. She still thought there was a way out if she could just get her hands on that cash. Please, she whispered. Just give us the money and we will go. We will disappear. You will never see us again. I will sign divorce papers. I will give Tevin everything. Just let me have the cash to start over. I looked at the briefcase. It was heavy in my hand. It was time. You want the package, I asked? Yes, she breathed. Yes, please. I walked over to the dining table, pushing aside a tray of uneaten caviar. I set the briefcase down with a heavy thud. The sound echoed in the empty room. Paige pulled herself up, using the table for support. Her eyes were locked on the latches. She looked like a starving animal seeing meat. I clicked the latches open. Snap, snap. Paige leaned forward, holding her breath. She expected stacks of $100 bills. She expected salvation. I threw the lid open. There was no green inside. Only white paper. Stacks and stacks of legal documents. Paige stared at the contents, her brain struggling to process the image. Where is the money? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. Where is the cash? There is no cash, Paige, I said. There never was. I reached into the case and pulled out the first document. It was a thick sheaf of papers with a blue cover. This, I said, slamming it down on the table, is a deed of trust. You thought you were clever transferring the house to an LLC. You thought that would protect it from Tevin, but you forgot one thing. You used my money to buy the initial equity. And when you defaulted on the mortgage payments because you were too busy buying jewelry, I bought the note. I leaned in close to her face. I own the debt, Paige, which means I own the house. And this morning at 9 a.m. my lawyers exercised the foreclosure clause. I pulled out another paper. It was a bright red notice. This is an eviction order, I said. You are trespassing. This property belongs to Jefferson Holdings now. You have exactly 5 minutes to get off my land before I have you removed for criminal trespass. Paige was shaking her head back and forth, back and forth. No, 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 she chanted. This is my house. This is my life. Not anymore, I said. I reached back into the briefcase. And this, I said, pulling out the final document, is not for the house. It is for you. I held up the arrest warrant. It was signed by a federal judge. Conspiracy to commit wire fraud, I read aloud. Money laundering, identity theft. And thanks to the testimony of your friend, the document forger solicitation of falsified medical records. Paige let out a wail that sounded like an animal dying. She grabbed the edge of the table, her knuckles white. You can't do this, she screamed. I am pregnant. They won't arrest a pregnant woman. They arrest pregnant women every day, Paige, I said. They have a special ward for it. You will get excellent medical care, better than Tevin got when you let his teeth rot out of his head. I checked my watch. "Your 5 minutes are up," I said. And right on cue, the wail of sirens cut through the night air. Blue and red lights flashed against the floor-to-ceiling windows, painting the room in a chaotic strobe of color. It wasn't just a patrol car, it was a caravan. I had called in every favor I had. I had the economic crimes unit, I had the sheriff's department. I wanted a show of force that would make the neighbors talk for a decade. The front doors, which Tevin had left open, were suddenly filled with uniformed officers. They didn't knock. They swarmed in their boots, loud on the marble floor. "Police, everyone stay where you are," a voice boomed. Rocco raised his hands, stepping away from Brody. "He is all yours, officers," Rocco said. "Be careful, he bites." 2 officers grabbed Brody, hauling him off the table. He didn't fight. He was limp defeated. He let them cuff him without saying a word. He knew the game was over. But Paige wasn't going quietly. When she saw the officers approaching her with handcuffs, she panicked. "No," she shrieked, backing away. "Do not touch me. My father-in-law is having a mental breakdown. He is confused. This is all a mistake." An officer, a woman with a face like stone, didn't even pause. She grabbed Paige's wrist and spun her around. "Paige Jefferson, you are under arrest," the officer recited. Paige struggled, kicking and screaming. Her designer dress twisted around her legs. Her expensive shoes slipped on the floor. It was undignified. It was ugly, and it was being recorded. I looked toward the patio doors. A group of guests who hadn't been able to leave because their cars were blocked in by the police cruisers were standing there, phones raised. They were live streaming. They were capturing every second of Paige's downfall. The socialite of the hills was being dragged out in cuffs, and the whole world was watching. "Get off me," she screamed. "Do you know who I am?" "We know exactly who you are, ma'am," the officer said, tightening the cuffs. They dragged her past me. She looked at me, her eyes wild with hate and fear. "Caleb, help me," she begged one last time. I looked at her. I looked at the woman who had almost destroyed my bloodline. "I helped you, Paige," I said calmly. "I helped you find justice." Tevin stepped up beside me. He watched his wife being led away. He didn't look happy. He didn't look sad. He looked resolved. "Is it done?" he asked. I closed the metal briefcase. "It is done, son," I said. We watched as they loaded her into the back of a cruiser. The lights flashed one last time, illuminating her face pressed against the glass, sobbing. Then the car pulled away, disappearing into the darkness down the winding hill. The house was quiet now. The music was gone. The guests were gone. The police were gone. It was just me, Tevin, and Rocco standing in the ruins of a party that never really started. Rocco walked over, wiping his hands on his pants. "That went well," he said. I looked around the empty mansion. It was a beautiful house. A house built for a family. But it had been filled with snakes. "Let's go," I said to Tevin. "Where?" he asked. "Home," I said. "The real one. I have a pot of red bean soup on the stove, and we have a lot of work to do tomorrow." Tevin nodded. He adjusted his suit jacket. "Yeah," he said. "Let's go home, Dad." We walked out of the stolen house, leaving the door open. Let the wind blow through it. Let it blow away the stench of lies. We had our lives back, and for the first time in 2 years, the air tasted sweet. The interrogation room smelled like stale coffee and fear. It was a cold, sterile box with cinder block walls painted a depressing shade of beige and a two-way mirror that hummed with fluorescent light. I stood on the other side of that glass, watching the woman who had lived in my house for 2 years. Paige looked different without the soft lighting of the mansion. Under the harsh glare of the interrogation room lights, she looked sharp and jagged. Her expensive dress was wrinkled and stained. Her mascara had run down her cheeks in black rivulets, making her look like a raccoon that had been through a car wash. She wasn't crying anymore. The tears had dried up the moment the handcuffs clicked shut. Now there was only rage. I opened the heavy steel door and walked in. Tevin stayed outside. He had seen enough. He didn't need to hear the poison she was about to spit. I sat down in the metal chair opposite her. I didn't say a word. I just placed a single manila folder on the table between us. Paige looked up. Her eyes were bloodshot and filled with a hatred so pure it was almost impressive. The mask of the sweet soccer mom was gone. The facade of the loving wife was dust. Sitting there was the real Paige, a predator who had been cornered. "You think you are smart, don't you?" She spat, her voice dripping with venom. "You think you won. Look at you. A sad old man playing detective. I leaned back in my chair, crossing my arms. I didn't take the bait. I am not playing Paige, I said calmly. She let out a harsh bark of laughter. You are pathetic, and your son is even worse. Do you know how easy it was to break him? It was like snapping a twig. Tevin is weak, Caleb. He is a spineless little boy who needs his daddy to fight his battles. I did him a favor. I gave him a purpose. For 2 years, he actually thought he was a hero. She leaned forward, dragging her handcuffs across the metal table with a screech. And you, she hissed, you are just a stingy, bitter old man sitting on a pile of money you are too afraid to spend. I deserve that money. I was the one living life. I was the one with ambition. You were just rotting in that house, growing tomatoes and waiting to die. I tried to help you speed up the process. Her words were meant to hurt. They were meant to cut deep to provoke a reaction. But they just bounced off me. I had heard worse from pirates holding AK-47s. Paige was just a desperate grifter with a vocabulary. You call it ambition, I said. The law calls it fraud. The law, she sneered. I will be out on bail in 24 hours. Brody will talk. He will say I was coerced. I am a pregnant white woman, Caleb. Juries love me. They will look at you and your ex-con son and they will see exactly what I want them to see. Angry men trying to destroy a mother. She was delusional. She still thought she could manipulate the narrative. She still thought her tears were currency. She didn't realize that the market had crashed. You really don't get it, do you? I asked quietly. You think this is still a game of, he said, she said. It is, she snapped, and I tell the best stories. I shook my head slowly. Stories don't pay the bills, Paige, I said. And speaking of bills, we need to talk about yours. I opened the manila folder. I didn't look at her. I looked at the papers. I adjusted my glasses. I took my time. I wanted her to wait. I wanted her to wonder. What is that? She asked, her voice losing a fraction of its edge. This, I said, sliding a document toward her, is a notification of assignment. She squinted at it. I don't know what that means. It means I said that I went shopping this morning. But I didn't buy clothes. I didn't buy cars. I bought debt. I pointed to the first page. This is your credit card debt from Visa, $40,000. The bank considered it a high-risk toxic asset because you have no income and pending criminal charges. They were happy to sell it to me for pennies on the dollar. I flipped the page. This is your personal loan from the credit union. $25,000. Bought it. I flipped again. This is the lien on your car. Bought it. I looked up at her. Her face had gone pale again. The arrogance was flickering out like a dying candle. I own your debt, Paige, I said, my voice low and hard. All of it. Every single cent you borrowed, stole, or spent. I am your only creditor. I am the bank. And unlike the bank, I don't negotiate payment plans. I don't offer grace periods. And I definitely don't forgive. She stared at the papers, her hands trembling in the cuffs. Why would you do that? She whispered. Why would you pay my debts? I didn't pay them for you, I said. I paid them for me. Because in this state, when you owe a creditor a significant amount and you are proven to have obtained that credit through fraud, the creditor has the right to petition for immediate liquidation of assets. I leaned across the table. That means everything you have left is mine. The jewelry you hid in your mother's attic. Mine. The cash you buried in the backyard of the rental house. Mine. The designer clothes in your closet. Mine. I am going to strip you bare, Paige. I am going to take every single thing you bought with my son's life. She shook her head, tears welling up again, but this time they were real. These were tears of loss. You can't leave me with nothing, she choked out. I need money for a lawyer. I need money for the baby. You don't need money for a lawyer, I said. You are going to have a public defender. And you don't need money for the baby because you aren't going to have that baby. The room went deadly silent. Paige stopped breathing. She looked down at her stomach, then up at me, her eyes wide with a terror that went beyond money. What do you mean? She whispered. I mean, I said that you are facing federal charges for wire fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy. You are looking at 10 to 15 years in a federal penitentiary. That baby is going to be born behind bars. I sat back watching the reality sink in. And when a baby is born in prison, Paige, the mother, doesn't get to keep it. The state takes custody, or a family member does. Her mouth opened and closed. She was trying to find a way out. She was trying to find a lie that would fix this. "Brody," she gasped. "Brody will take him. It is his son." "Brody?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "You mean the drug dealer who just signed a plea deal testifying against you to save his own skin?" "Brody is going to prison too, Paige. He has 3 strikes. He is gone." She started to hyperventilate. Her chest heaved. "Then my parents," she cried. "My parents will take the baby." "Your parents?" I asked. "The ones you haven't spoken to in 5 years? The ones who live in a trailer in Nevada? I spoke to them this morning. They said they warned you about your greed years ago. They said they want nothing to do with you or your mess. They aren't coming, Paige." I stood up. I closed the folder. "You are alone," I said. "You are completely and utterly alone. You have no money, you have no friends, you have no family, you have nothing but a jumpsuit and a cot, just like Tevin." She started to scream. It was a raw, broken sound. She lunged at me across the table, but the cuffs held her back. She thrashed and wailed, cursing me, cursing Tevin, cursing the world. "You are the devil," she screamed. "No," I said, walking to the door. "I am just a father, and you messed with the wrong son." I opened the door. The sound of her screaming followed me into the hallway. I walked past the officers who were watching with grim expressions. I walked past Tevin, who was leaning against the wall, his arms crossed. He looked at me. He heard the screams. "Is it over?" he asked. I nodded. "For her, it is over," I said. "For us, it is just beginning." We walked out of the station into the cool night air. The city was quiet. The war was over. The enemy was destroyed. But there was no joy in it, only silence, and the heavy satisfaction of a debt finally paid in full. The drive back to my house was quiet. It wasn't the comfortable silence of 2 men who had just won a war. It was the heavy, suffocating silence of a funeral. Tevin sat in the passenger seat, staring out the window at the passing streetlights. He had loosened his tie and unbuttoned his collar. The adrenaline that had fueled him through the party and the confrontation at the police station was gone. In its place was a hollow exhaustion that seemed to seep into his bones. He didn't look like a victor. He looked like a man who had just surveyed the wreckage of his own life and realized he was the one who lit the match. When we pulled into the driveway, he didn't move to get out. He just sat there, his hands gripping his knees so hard his knuckles were white. I turned off the engine and let the darkness settle around us. "I should be happy," he whispered, his voice cracking. "She is gone. She is in jail. I am free. But I don't feel free, Dad. I feel empty." I looked at him. I saw the shadow of the boy who used to cry when his ice cream fell on the ground. But this wasn't about ice cream. This was about 2 years of his life stolen. This was about the realization that the woman he slept next to was a monster. "You are in shock, son," I said quietly. "You have been running on survival instinct for 700 days. Now you can stop running, and when you stop running, the pain catches up." He shook his head, a violent jerk of motion. "It is not just pain," he said, turning to look at me. His eyes were red-rimmed and haunted. "It is shame, Dad. It is a deep, burning shame. How could I be so stupid? How could I let her do that to me? I let her talk me into prison. I let her steal your money. I stood there and signed the papers while she smiled at me." He slammed his fist against the dashboard. "I am a weak man," he spat. "I am a coward. You raised me better than this. You raised a warrior, and I turned into a doormat." I didn't answer him immediately. I let the words hang in the air. I let him feel them, because he needed to purge this poison before he could heal. "Let us go inside," I said. "We can't fix the past in a truck." We walked into the house. It was the same house he grew up in, the same smell of old wood and floor wax. But tonight it felt different. It felt like a sanctuary. I went straight to the kitchen. I didn't turn on the bright overhead lights. I just clicked on the stove light and the small lamp on the counter. "Sit," I ordered, pointing to the stool at the island. Tevin sat. He slumped forward, resting his forehead on the cool granite. I took a pot out of the cupboard. I opened the fridge and pulled out the soaking red beans, the andouille sausage, the trinity of peppers, onions, and celery. I started to chop. The rhythmic sound of the knife against the cutting board filled the room. Chop, chop, chop. It was a sound of order, a sound of normalcy. I cooked. I browned the sausage. I sautéed the vegetables until the kitchen smelled like my mother's kitchen back in Louisiana. It smelled like comfort. It smelled like safety. Tevin watched me. He didn't speak. He just watched the steam rise from the pot. When the soup was ready, I ladled a big bowl for him and put it down. I put a spoon next to it. Eat, I said. He picked up the spoon, but he didn't eat. He just stirred the beans around. I don't deserve this, he mumbled. I stopped what I was doing. I leaned across the counter, getting right in his face. Stop it, I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it was hard. Stop pitying yourself, Tevin. It is unbecoming. He looked up, startled by my tone. You think you are the first man to be fooled by a pretty face and a convincing lie, I asked. You think you are the only man who ever trusted the wrong person. Son, history is written by men who made mistakes. The difference is what they did after. I walked around the counter and sat next to him. You call yourself weak, I said. I look at you and I see a man who survived 2 years in a state penitentiary without joining a gang and without losing his soul. I see a man who walked into a room full of people who judged him and told the truth. I see a man who stood up to a drug dealer. That wasn't me, Tevin said. That was you. You saved me. You dressed me up. You gave me the words. I gave you the suit. I corrected him. But the man inside the suit, that was you. I couldn't make you stand tall, Tevin. I couldn't make you look her in the eye. You did that. You found that steel inside yourself. He looked down at the bowl. I still feel like a fool, he whispered. Good, I said. Hold on to that feeling. Remember it. Because that feeling is your tuition. You paid a high price for this education, son. 2 years of your life, $500,000 of my money. That is an expensive degree. Don't waste it by feeling sorry for yourself. Use it. I took a spoonful of my own soup. You were not weak, I said, chewing slowly. You were naive. There is a difference. You thought the world played by the rules you were raised with. You thought love was a contract that both sides honored. Now you know better. Now you know that trust is a liability until it is verified. Tevin took a bite of the soup. He swallowed. He took another. How do I come back from this? He asked. Everyone knows. My reputation is destroyed. My career is gone. Your reputation as a sucker is destroyed, I said. But your reputation as a man who took down a fraud ring is just beginning. You are a software engineer, Tevin. You build systems. You find bugs. You fix them. I tapped his temple. Your life had a bug. Her name was Paige. You patched the code. Now you reboot. He looked at me, and for the first time the shame in his eyes receded just a fraction, replaced by a flicker of understanding. Reboot, he repeated. Yes, I said. And while you are rebooting, you are going to help me. I am too old to manage these accounts alone. I need someone who knows numbers, someone who knows how liars think. He frowned. You want me to work for you? I want you to take over, I said. I have businesses, Tevin. I have investments. I have security contracts. I have been running them on autopilot since I retired, but they need fresh eyes. They need someone who isn't afraid to look for the cracks. You trust me with your money, he asked, incredulous. After I let Paige steal it. I trust you because you know what it feels like to lose it, I said. A man who has been burned is the best fire marshal. Tevin finished his bowl. He wiped his mouth. He sat up straighter. Okay, he said. Okay, Dad, I will do it. Good, I said. Start tomorrow. The office is a mess. The next few weeks were a revelation. I watched my son transform. He didn't go back to being the soft, gentle boy he was before. That boy was gone, buried in the prison yard. The man who emerged was harder, sharper. He came into my home office the next morning at 7 a.m. He was wearing a button-down shirt and slacks. He didn't look like a prisoner. He looked like a CEO. Give me the books, he said. I handed him the ledgers for my rental properties and my consulting firm. He spent 3 days locked in that room. He didn't sleep. He barely ate. He ran audits. He cross-referenced receipts. He dug through 5 years of digital paper trails. On the 4th day, he called a meeting. It was with my property manager, a man named Gary, who had been with me for 10 years. I trusted Gary. I invited him over for coffee. Tevin sat at the head of the table. He didn't offer Gary coffee. He slid a folder across the mahogany surface. Gary, Tevin said, his voice devoid of emotion. Can you explain why maintenance costs at the apartment complex have risen 40% in the last 2 years, while tenant complaints about broken appliances have doubled? Gary laughed nervously. He looked at me. Caleb, what is this? Is your boy playing boss? I leaned back in my chair, sipping my coffee. Answer the question, Gary, I said. Gary sweated. Well, costs are up, Tevin. Inflation, supply chain issues. You know how it is. I know how it is, Tevin said, opening the folder. I know that you own a shell company called G&M Supplies. I know that you bill my father as company for premium parts and then buy refurbished junk from a salvage yard. I know you pocket the difference, about $6,000 a month. Gary stood up, his face red. This is ridiculous. I quit. You can't quit, Tevin said calmly, because you are fired for cause, and my father's lawyers are already filing a civil suit to recover the stolen funds plus damages. Tevin looked at Gary with eyes that were cold and dead, the same eyes he had turned on Paige. Get out of my house, Tevin said. Gary ran. I watched my son. He closed the folder. He didn't gloat. He didn't smile. He just picked up the next file. Who is next? He asked. I smiled. It was a small, proud smile. My son had learned the lesson. He had taken the pain and forged it into a weapon. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He was hunting. He cleared the rot out of my business in a month. He fired 3 people. He renegotiated contracts. He installed new security protocols. He turned a sleepy retirement portfolio into a war machine, but more importantly, he started to heal. I saw it in the small things, the way he walked with his head up, the way he laughed at a joke on the radio, the way he stopped flinching when a door slammed. One evening, we were sitting on the porch watching the sun go down. He was drinking a beer. I was drinking iced tea. You were right, Dad, he said, looking out at the yard. About what I asked. About the tuition, he said. It was expensive. But I think I got my money's worth. I looked at him. The scars were still there, the mental ones and the physical ones. But they weren't open wounds anymore. They were marks of experience. You did, son, I said. You graduated with honors. He took a sip of beer. So, what is next? He asked. We fixed the business. We put Paige in jail. What do we do now? I looked at him. I had an idea that had been forming since the night of the live stream, since I read the thousands of comments from people who had been used and abused by their own families. We expand, I said. Expand what he asked. The business of justice, I said. There are a lot of people out there, Tevin. People like you were. People who are blind. People who are being eaten alive by the ones they love. They need help. They need someone to look at the books. Someone to find the truth. Tevin looked at me. A slow smile spread across his face. It was the first genuine smile I had seen in a long time. A consultancy, he said. For the heartbroken and the defrauded. Exactly, I said. We have the money. We have the skills. And we have the motivation. Jefferson and Son. He said, testing the name. I liked the sound of it. Jefferson and Son. I agreed. Security and investigations. We don't just find the truth. We deliver the package. We clinked glasses. The sun dipped below the horizon. The nightmare was over. A new day was beginning. And this time we were writing the rules. It has been exactly 365 days since I watched the police drag Paige out of my life in handcuffs. A lot can happen in a year. Some people rebuild, some people rot. We chose to rebuild. I am sitting in the corner office of a high-rise downtown. It is not the penthouse Paige rented with my stolen money. It is the headquarters of Jefferson and Son Security and Investigations. The sign on the door is real gold, not painted plastic. Tevin walks in. He is wearing a charcoal suit that costs more than the car he used to drive. He is holding a tablet and he looks busy. But it is a good busy. It is the busy of a man who is building an empire. We closed the Peterson case, he says, setting the tablet on my desk. The husband tried to hide $3 million in crypto assets before the divorce. We found the keys in 24 hours. Mrs. Peterson is going to be very happy. I nod. Good work, son. Send the invoice. And add a 20% rush fee. Tevin smiles. The gap in his teeth is long gone, replaced by a permanent implant that looks better than the original. The hollow look in his eyes has been filled with a steely confidence. He isn't the soft boy who got eaten alive anymore. He is the man who does the eating. Our firm has become the go-to agency for high net worth individuals who suspect they are being played. We specialize in family fraud. We specialize in uncovering the lies that people tell the ones they claim to love. We have a waiting list 6 months long. We have recovered over $10 million in stolen assets for our clients in the last year alone. Every time we catch a con artist, every time we expose a greedy spouse, I feel a little bit of the weight lift off my shoulders. It is therapy, but it is therapy that pays very well. We use the profits to start a legal defense fund for men like Tevin, men who were coerced into false confessions, men who were manipulated by partners who used love as a weapon. We have gotten 3 guys out of prison so far. 3 innocent men who are home with their families because we had the resources to fight for them. I look out the window at the city below. It looks different from up here. It doesn't look like a place of danger anymore. It looks like a chessboard. And we are the ones moving the pieces. My personal phone rings. It is sitting on the desk next to a picture of Tevin and me fishing last month. The screen lights up with a number I recognize. It is not a client. It is a collect call from the Federal Correctional Institution in Danbury. Tevin sees it. He stops what he is doing. He looks at the phone, then at me. "You don't have to answer that," he says. I know I say, but I want to. I press accept. The automated voice tells me I am talking to an inmate. Then there is a click, and I hear breathing. It is ragged, desperate breathing. "Caleb," a voice whispers. It is Paige, but it doesn't sound like Paige. The arrogance is gone. The entitlement is stripped away. She sounds small. She sounds broken. "Caleb, please don't hang up. I used my last phone credit to call you. I don't say anything. I just listen." I lean back in my leather chair and let her voice fill the expensive silence of my office. "I need help," she sobs. "The public defender is useless. He says I should take a plea for 15 years. 15 years, Caleb. I will be 45 when I get out. My life will be over." She pauses, waiting for me to comfort her, waiting for the old Caleb, the gullible Caleb, to step in and save her. "I need a real lawyer," she continues, her voice rising in panic. "I need money for an appeal. I know you have it. I saw you on the news. I saw the article about your new company. You are rich, Caleb. You can afford to help me. Please, for old time's sake, for the baby." The baby. She had the baby inside. A boy. The state took him immediately. He is in foster care now, miles away from her poison. She hasn't seen him since the day he was born. "I am the mother of your grandchild," she lies. Even now, after everything, she is still trying to run the same con. She still thinks that if she says it enough times, it will become true. I look at Tevin. He is shaking his head slowly, a look of disgust on his face. He doesn't want to talk to her. He has nothing to say to the woman who put him in a cage. I don't say a word to her. I don't give her the satisfaction of hearing my voice. I don't give her a lecture. I don't give her anger. I give her something much worse. I press the mute button. "Rocco," I call out. Rocco steps into the office. He is wearing a suit now too, although it is cut to hide the shoulder holster he wears. He is my head of security. He is the man who keeps the wolves at bay. "For you," I say, holding out the phone. Rocco grins. It is a scary grin. He walks over and takes the phone. He looks at the caller ID. He knows exactly who it is. He unmutes the call. Paige is still talking. She is begging now, bargaining, promising she will pay me back, promising she will disappear. Rocco holds the phone to his ear. He listens for a moment, chewing on a toothpick. "Yeah, I hear you, sweetheart," he says, his voice like gravel. "But here is the thing. The boss is busy. We are all busy. We are running a business here." He pauses, listening to her scream. No money coming," he says. "The bank is closed, permanently. And as for the lawyer, I suggest you get comfortable with the one you have. 15 years isn't so bad. You get used to the food eventually." He looks at me. I give him a nod. It is time to cut the cord. "One last thing," Rocco says. "That package you sent 2 years ago, the one with the orange jumpsuit." He pauses, letting the silence stretch across the line. "Return to sender," he says. He hangs up. He drops the phone back onto the desk. "Done," he says. Tevin lets out a breath he seems to have been holding for a year. He smiles. It is a real smile. "Let us go, Dad," he says. The pilot is waiting. We walk out of the office. We take the private elevator down to the garage. We get into the back of a black SUV. Rocco drives. We head to the private airfield on the outskirts of town. This time, there are no lies about Dubai. There are no fake photos. There are no forged visas. We are going to Italy for a month, just the 2 of us. We are going to drink wine, real wine from actual vineyards. We are going to eat pasta. We are going to sit on a terrace overlooking the ocean and we are going to talk about the future. We pull up to the jet. It is sleek and silver, gleaming in the afternoon sun. The engines are whining, ready to go. I look at it. It is a long way from the farmer's market. It is a long way from the prison visitation room. Tevin grabs his bag. He looks at me. "You ready, old man?" he asks. I slap him on the back. "I was born ready, son." We walk up the stairs. I pause at the top and look back at the city one last time. Somewhere down there in a cold, concrete cell, Paige is realizing that no one is coming to save her. She is realizing that her greed bought her a one-way ticket to oblivion. I don't feel sorry for her. I don't feel anything for her. She is just a ghost now, a bad memory fading in the rearview mirror. I step inside the plane. The air conditioning is cool. The seats are soft leather. A flight attendant hands me a glass of champagne. "To justice," Tevin says, raising his glass. I clink mine against his. "To family," I say. The real kind. The kind you fight for. And the kind you kill for. I take a sip. It tastes like victory. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Let me know in the comments if you think Paige got what she deserved or if 15 years wasn't enough. And remember, if someone hands you a package with your name on it, make sure you open it alone. You never know what kind of war is inside. Until next time, watch your back and keep your circle small. Throughout my life in security, I lived by a simple code: trust but verify. I forgot that rule when it came to family, and it almost cost me my son. The biggest lesson here isn't about money or revenge. It's about the true definition of loyalty. Blood doesn't make you, family actions do. We often ignore the red flags because we want to believe in the best version of people, but sometimes you have to look the devil in the eye to realize who they truly are. Protect your peace, protect your assets, and never apologize for demanding the respect you deserve. If you enjoyed watching justice get served, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories from the trenches, and let me know in the comments. Would you have given Paige a second chance, or did she get exactly what she deserved?